At Tilly's direction, Leo arrived at a house situated on the highest point in town. The view from here was expansive. Gazing into the distance, Leo could see the long coastline and, out in the ocean, a small, fog-shrouded island that shimmered in and out of sight. That must be the island Tilly had mentioned, the one where the head of her order was trapped. Before they even reached the courtyard, it seemed Tilly had business to attend to. A few mages in pale robes hurried over the moment they saw her, and she could only flash Leo an apologetic look. Leo waved them on, telling them to handle their work first, then turned back to Evelyn. Tilly's little prank had left Evelyn's hair soaked through. She'd been dabbing at it with a towel the whole way here, and it was still damp. Evelyn shot Leo a look of pure exasperation. "Professor, let me help you with that." "Don't." Evelyn glared daggers at Tilly's retreating back, her whole body simmering with irritation. "Is that witch completely insane?" "Calm down, Professor." Leo offered a helpless smile. "That's just how she is. It's probably best if you talk to her as little as possible from now on." Evelyn shot him another glare. "She absolutely did it on purpose. She was targeting me, I know it." Leo chuckled awkwardly. He wasn't sure if Tilly was targeting Evelyn specifically, but her personality had always been a nasty piece of work. She looked like a quiet, withdrawn kid, but she had a real mean streak hidden underneath. He couldn't believe she was the vice head of the order now and still acted like a child who loved playing cruel jokes. "Oomph." Evelyn snorted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "It seems the rumors were right after all. A cunning witch through and through." "Professor, keep your voice down." Leo glanced back nervously. Even from this distance, it was as if Tilly had eyes in the back of her head. She turned around. "What are you two talking about?" she asked, blinking, as she started walking slowly back toward them. Leo cleared his throat. Nothing at all." Tilly noticed Evelyn staring at her, coiled like a spring. "Is your teacher not feeling well, Leo?" Leo clamped a hand over Evelyn's mouth before she could speak. "Yeah, it's the sun. She's feeling a little under the weather." "Oh." Tilly nodded, then raised a hand. "Shall I help again?" "You stay away from me," Evelyn hissed, leaping back several feet like a cornered cat. No. Leo quickly backtracked. "It's not the sun. She's just not used to the local climate. She's never been here before." Tilly tilted her head, a confused expression on her face. "Is that so?" Leo nodded vigorously. "If she's not adapting to the environment." Tilly mused for a moment, then raised her hand again. "I have another way to help with that." A cloud of mist began to form in her palm as she prepared to cast another spell on Evelyn. Evelyn's eyes went wide with panic. "Don't you come near me." Leo looked on, torn between laughter and tears. He quickly grabbed Tilly's hand. As her purple eyes shifted to him in confusion, Leo said quickly, "Professor, she's a vampire. Her recovery is incredible. You don't need to worry about her, really. She'll be fine in a little while." "Oh." Tilly wore a look of vague understanding, then broke into a faint smile. "Well, I won't help her for now, then." Right. Leo shot a meaningful look at Helena. "Helena, why don't you keep Tilly company for a bit? You guys go on and eat. I'll be right there." Helena opened her mouth, looking at Tilly with a hint of apprehension. Tilly smiled gently and stroked her head. "It has been a long time since I've had a chance to talk with little Helena." Helena felt a shiver run down her spine at the sight of that smile. Once the others had all gone inside the house, leaving the courtyard empty again, Leo turned to Evelyn and spoke in a low, patient voice. "Professor, you don't pick a fight on their home turf. Please, don't talk behind Tilly's back anymore." Putting aside how sharp her senses are, she has eyes and ears all over this place. Evelyn glanced in the direction Tilly had gone, muttering resentfully. "Oomph. Helena was right about her. She really is a psycho." "Prof, Essia?" Leo gave her a disapproving look. Evelyn deflated like a popped balloon. Fine, I won't say another word," she said resentfully. "If I speak to her again, I'm a dog." And even if she wasn't planning on taking a cleaver to him, she was definitely cooking up some other scheme. Leo hadn't come here for a vacation. His guard was up, his mind steeled with a warrior's resolve to face her head-on. If he didn't get Tilly back into containment, he probably wouldn't be able to eat a decent meal ever again. Evelyn wasn't thinking nearly as deeply as Leo. She was just replaying his last words in her mind. "You're not an outsider." The frustration on her face softened. A smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "I guess you do have a conscience after all, kid." And the witch's control over magic. It was terrifyingly precise, a level of mastery that left Evelyn feeling completely outmatched. An enemy like that was something she was utterly powerless against. After their talk, she followed Leo, walking slowly into the house Tilly had prepared for them, staring at the back in front of her, not particularly broad, almost a little thin. Evelyn couldn't help but feel a knot of worry tighten in her stomach. The living room was spacious and bright, the furnishings surprisingly luxurious. But then he remembered the townspeople had once been incredibly wealthy, and it all made sense. When he reached the dining table, Tilly had already had someone prepare lunch. It was a lavish spread of fresh seafood. "This was all prepared especially for you," Tilly said with a smile. "This is just a remote little town, nothing like your new haven. This is the best we could do." "Thank you. This is more than enough," Leo said gratefully. "I think it's great." Helena stared at the table piled high with seafood, feeling not a shred of appetite. She looked miserably at Leo. "Doesn't Helena like it?" Tilly asked. Helena forced a smile at her. "I love it." Tilly smiled and patted her head. "Helena is getting so well-behaved now." Helena pulled her head away, her resistance clear. Leo watched the two of them. Compared to her relationship with Ophelia, Helena's dynamic with the witch was actually manageable. Tilly's personality was more reserved, not as sharp-edged as Ophelia, who had always carried herself as the lady of the house. Of course, what Helena and Tilly were really thinking was another matter entirely. Sensing the quiet in the room, Tilly spoke up with a smile. "Oh, right, let me go get you presents. They're wonderful things I found during my travels these past 4 years. I'm sure you'll love them." Leo looked at her. "You've been traveling all this time?" "For the past 4 years. Tilly smiled back at him, her voice light. "Yes. After you disappeared 4 years ago, I never stopped looking for you. To find you, I traveled the entire northern continent, the entire southern continent. I went to more places than I can count, searched to the ends of the earth." Her tone was casual, as if she were talking about trivial matters, but every word landed with a strange weight. Leo stared in shock. Tilly seemed to be struggling to suppress some powerful emotion. He even saw a flash of raw malice in her purple eyes. "Tilly." Seeing her condition worsening, Leo tried to get her attention, his voice laced with concern. But it was as if she couldn't hear him at all, completely lost in her own world. 4 years. 4 long years. Her head was bowed, black hair tumbling forward to hide her face in shadow, her expression utterly bleak. I thought you would never come back. I even prepared for the worst." Her hands clenched into fists, her body trembling with emotion. "Tilly." Leo grew tense. From the first time he'd met the witch until now, he had never seen her on the verge of such a hysterical breakdown. But Tilly remained unresponsive. Her negative emotions seemed to coalesce into a tangible force, a terrifying and oppressive atmosphere descending upon the dining table. The very air around them began to shimmer with a strange distortion. Crash! A vase on the table suddenly shattered. "Brother!" Helena couldn't withstand the pressure any longer. Her body was rigid as she looked at Leo anxiously. Evelyn tugged on Leo's arm, pointing at Tilly. "Look at her." This was the second time Leo had seen that change in her. That bizarre, rippling distortion. Bzzz. If Tilly were an image on a screen, that instant was like a signal interruption, causing the frame to stutter, the data to corrupt. Leo thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. What was going on? He'd never seen a supernatural being change like this before. This wasn't some kind of backlash. Had she been practicing some obscure form of magic and gone off the deep end? The invisible pressure in the air vanished. Helena and Evelyn both let out a sigh of relief. Tilly just shook her head with a bitter smile. "It's probably all the work at the order. I haven't been resting well lately." She quickly offered an apologetic smile to Helena and Evelyn. "That was a special situation. Please don't worry, I mean you no harm." Evelyn pursed her lips, resisting the urge to roll her eyes. "No harm. My ass." The atmosphere finally returned to normal, and everyone quietly resumed their meal. Tilly smiled at Helena and pushed a plate of food toward her. "You must be exhausted from the journey. You haven't had a proper meal, have you? Go on, eat." "Why aren't you eating?" Leo saw the conflicted and miserable expression on Helena's face and said with a chuckle, "She doesn't like this stuff. Don't force her." Tilly covered her mouth in surprise. "Helena doesn't like seafood?" She patted Helena's head apologetically. "I'm so sorry. We lived together for so long, and I never knew there was something you didn't like to eat." Helena took a small piece of bread Leo handed her and began nibbling on it with her head down. "It's fine. I won't waste any food. How could it be fine?" Tilly's smile was tinged with self-reproach. "You're Leo's sister, which makes you my sister." "Oh, right." She seemed to have thought of a way to make up for it. "I almost forgot. We were just talking about your presents. I'll go get them now." She immediately stood up and walked toward the next room. The three of them watched her go. Soon, she returned with 2 beautifully wrapped gift boxes. She handed one to Helena, her smile gentle. "Go on, open it. See if you like it." Helena held up the puppet, frowning as she examined it closely. Then she turned to Leo with an expression that was halfway between crying and laughing. It's so ugly. Ugly. Tilly blinked, confused. In her eyes, this kind of doll was beautiful. Leo, what do you think? She looked to him for his opinion. Leo stared at the doll, momentarily a loss for words. The pale skin, the grotesque makeup, the hollow, oversized eyes, and the unervingly strange smile. What girl would possibly like this? You could tell him it was a prop for a black magic curse or a haunted doll possessed by a ghost, and he would have believed it. It was triggering his uncanny valley effect. Leo looked at Tilly. Your aesthetic is as creepy as ever. Creepy? Tilly asked, curious. What does that mean? It means it's beautiful, Leo said flatly. Oh. Tilly looked expectantly back at Helena. So, do you like it? Helena forced an awkward smile, trying her best to convey gratitude. I like it. Even though she found it repulsive, Tilly was only the second person to ever give her a doll. Even if the gift was this ugly. Even if her real goal was just to suck up to her brother. After giving Helena her gift, Tilly turned to Leo, her eyes full of anticipation. So what wonderful thing do I get? Leo was actually starting to look forward to it, curious to see what new absurdity the witch would come up with. Under Tilly's watchful gaze, Leo opened his box. When he saw what was inside, he froze. It was a key, a perfectly ordinary-looking key. This is... Leo looked at Tilly, confused. Her entire face lit up with excitement. This is the key to the Divine Research Institute. The body of a god, and all the fruits of my research from the past 6 months, are all there. On that island. Leo suddenly remembered the information he'd gotten from the innkeeper. He had said that on the day the mages arrived, the body of a god washed ashore. So it was true. Tilly stared intently at Leo and continued. Remember what I told you in my letter? I wasn't lying. I have truly touched the edge of truth. Through my research on the god, I have gained unimaginable knowledge and power. Do you know what that means? Her voice grew fervent. I will become a being like a god. I will have endless power. She gripped Leo's hand tightly, her eyes burning like fire. What happened in Blackwater will never happen again. I will never again be powerless to watch you leave. No one in this world will be able to take you from me. We can be together forever. After the tumultuous lunch finally ended, Tilly was called away again by her subordinates. She seemed to be constantly busy. Seeing her apologetic expression, Leo nodded, signaling that she didn't need to worry about him. When she left, it was as if she took all the negative energy with her. The atmosphere at the table immediately lightened. Evelyn let out a sigh of relief, then muttered to Leo, she was genuinely terrifying just now. I'm starting to think the church's assessment of her as the calamity, which was right on the money. Leo sighed without a word. The witch wasn't just getting gloomier. She seemed to be getting crazier too. He fiddled with the key in his hand, thinking over what she had said. So for the past 6 months, Tilly had gathered all her supporters and turned on the head of the order. Not only had she trapped him and his followers on the island where the institute was located, but she had also erected a massive magical barrier to prevent anyone from leaving. This was the origin of the so-called God's Curse. Are you really going to the island with her? To see that? God's body. Evelyn frowned. Leo looked at her. I don't think I have much of a choice. The head of that order of magical arcanists holds a higher position than Tilly. Evelyn said with concern. He must be an incredibly powerful individual. This trip is extremely dangerous. The mage who tried to sneak out earlier was already a handful, and he was just one of the man's subordinates. The head himself, he had to be countless times stronger. But Leo shook his head. He was less concerned about the head of the order and more perplexed by something else. A god. Could a god really be studied? How is that possible? From his understanding of this world, all so-called gods were cosmic horrors, avatars of chaotic terror, unknowable, untouchable beings. Even the supposed one true God worshipped by the church, the great deity who bestows happiness and light upon humanity, was almost certainly a fake. Either no such God existed, and it was an invention of his followers, or it was some malevolent entity getting its kicks by toying with mortals. HM, what are you thinking about? The atmosphere had fallen quiet for a moment before Tilly's cheerful voice suddenly appeared at his ear. Nothing. Leo shook his head and looked at her. Seeing him fiddling with the key she had given him, Tilly said excitedly, Are you intrigued by what I told you? Do you want to witness the truth with me too? That's wonderful. Leo paused, but before he could say anything, Tilly grabbed his hand, her expression impatient. Quick, come with me. I'm taking you somewhere amazing. Leo quickly looked back, but he didn't even have time to say goodbye to his sister and teacher. A faint light flashed. A magic circle appeared on the ground, and in an instant, the two of them vanished. Seeing them disappear, Helena and Evelyn shot to their feet. It's over, it's over. Helena began to panic. Brother's been tricked and taken away again. What if that witch does something awful to him? The more she thought, the more anxious she became, her mind flashing back to the time her brother was taken by that horrible white-haired woman. What if something happens to him? That psycho is completely unhinged. What if she tricks him and kills him, and then follows him in some twisted suicide pact? Evelyn had been worried too, but hearing Helena's dramatic spiral, she couldn't help but snort with laughter. You think everyone is like you? Seeing Helena's expression darken, Evelyn glanced slyly at the puppet in her hand. That witch's powers are so mysterious, so strange. Maybe she wants to trap Leo's soul inside a doll. That way, he won't be able to run around anymore, and he'll never defy her orders again. Helena paused. That sounded familiar. It hit her, controlling body and mind. That was exactly what this woman had wanted to do to her brother before. Evelyn laughed. Don't get worked up just yet. She actually thought their line of reasoning was on the right track. That was talking about witnessing the truth with Leo. It couldn't be that simple. Who was she trying to fool? Tilly had gone to so much trouble to lure Leo here. She was definitely plotting something big. Evelyn just hadn't figured out what it was yet. Hey, where are you going? Helena saw her about to leave and moved to follow. To help your hopeless brother, of course. Evelyn waved a hand dismissively. You just stay here like a good girl. Don't follow me. But, no buts. Your stealth and speed are nowhere near my level. It's better to leave the investigating to me. Don't worry. Staring at the empty dining room, Helena pouted. The puppet sat on the table, its creepy smile aimed right at her, as if it were mocking her. Elsewhere, Leo and Tilly materialized on a windswept beach. The cold sea breeze bit at Leo's face, making him shiver. Tilly finally let go of his hand. She smiled toward the distant shore, where the sea fog was thick. The faint outline of a small wooden cabin was visible in the distance. Oh, Leo nodded in understanding. Her home was probably where she had been living for the past 6 months. But he was curious about something else. Why didn't you just teleport us directly there? The distance from town to the cabin on the beach was quite far. Because I want to talk with you. Tilly's wink was sly. How long has it been since we could just talk about everything and nothing? I miss those days. More importantly, the two of them finally had some rare time alone, away from all the irrelevant people. Oh, Leo nodded silently. After that, they walked side by side along the endless coastline. Tilly quietly poured out her heart to him. She spoke of her years of research that seemed to have no end, of her inability to find the cause of the mage's madness. The more she pursued magic, the closer she seemed to get to self-destruction, and she was gradually falling into despair. Listening to her endless complaints, Leo felt a heavy wave of negativity wash over him, so infectious that his own face grew grim. The witch was the definition of emotionally intense. Just being near her could change the atmospheric pressure. The sheer weight of her negativity and despair was enough to crush a person. After venting, Tilly stretched and let out a small yawn. Let's not think about all that depressing stuff. She turned to him, her face looking a little tired, and muttered quizzically, I don't know why, but I always feel sleepy when I'm around you. Are you some kind of human-sized sleep-inducing incense? Leo shook his head and laughed. I don't think I have that function. What are you looking at me like that for? Tilly noticed his stare and touched her cheeks self-consciously. How long has it been since you had a good night's sleep? Leo asked, frowning. The closer he got, the more clearly he could see the bone-deep exhaustion she couldn't hide. She looked worse than he did after pulling 3 all-nighters at an internet cafe back in his school days. He was genuinely afraid she might just drop dead from exhaustion. Sleep. Tilly shook her head, resigned. What'd I sleep for? There's so much to do. The ultimate secrets of magic, the truth of the world, are right in front of me. How could I possibly waste time on that? Unbelievable. Leo stared at her, speechless. Was she saying she never slept at all? But you can't just not sleep, Leo sighed, trying to reason with her. You need to be well-rested to dedicate yourself to your research more effectively, right? Tilly pouted, displeased. You're saying that too? Elder Marjorie and the others in the order had said the same thing, but she had never paid them any mind. After all, her time was the most precious thing in the world. Leo eyed her skeptically. Her words dripped with insincerity. He thought for a moment, then added with a smile, chronic sleep deprivation will make you less pretty, you know? You'll look worse and worse until you start to resemble one of those old hags from the fairy tales. Tilly paused, then said dismissively, so what? It's just a shell. She had always believed that she and Leo were drawn to each other because of their shared ideals. They never ran out of things to talk about. They could chat for 3 days and 3 nights straight. Their minds and souls were perfectly in sync. They were the best of friends, the most trusted comrades. What use was something as superficial as a physical shell to them? It was like discovering a new world. Her teacher was completely wrong. The people you were closest to weren't friends at all. They were clearly. Tilly fell into a moment of introspection. Her social circle had been pathetically small, something she could count on one hand. And because she and her teacher were always immersed in magical research, she couldn't be bothered to understand or deal with interpersonal relationships. So she had just taken her teacher's word for it, never really thinking it through. "What's wrong?" Leo asked, looking at her with concern. She had been fine a moment ago. Why the sudden change? And nothing. Tilly shook her head awkwardly. Then, as if remembering something, she waved her hand and conjured a small mirror. Averting her gaze from Leo, she nervously studied her reflection. Leo gave her a suspicious glance, wondering what was going on with this girl. But he still answered, "No, you've always been beautiful." "Oh," Tilly nodded quietly, but her heart was still in a knot. "So, should I really get some beauty sleep?" Leo and Tilly walked along the beach for a long time. Before they knew it, they had finally arrived at the small wooden cabin. "We're home," Tilly said, walking up to stand before the closed wooden door. Leo noticed a faint blue glow around the door frame. Tilly must have placed some kind of ward on it before she left. She reached out and waved her hand gently, and the magically sealed door swung open. Tilly looked back at Leo and gestured for him to enter. "Come on in." Leo nodded and followed her inside. He glanced around curiously. The cabin was small. The largest area was taken up by an alchemy station covered in familiar tools. Bookshelves lined the walls, and cabinets were filled with jars and vials, most likely containing magical ingredients. Tilly was completely absorbed in her magical research, so she paid no mind to practical matters. It had been the same when she lived in the old mansion. Every time Leo went into her room, there was barely any space to walk. Leo sat down in the chair at the desk and looked at Tilly, puzzled. He wasn't sure why she had brought him to her home. Was there some secret she wanted to share with him? "Let's have something to drink," Tilly said. She rummaged through a cabinet for a while, stirring up a cloud of dust, and finally found a tin of black tea that had been sitting there for who knows how long. Leo smiled and nodded. While Tilly was making the tea, Leo's gaze fell on her desk. The only thing in the entire room with any semblance of a personal touch was on that desk. In the most prominent spot was a photo frame. Inside was a picture of an adorable, younger Tilly with a woman who looked to be in her 30s. This was her teacher, Ursula, the previous head of the Order of Magical Arcanists. Next to the photo was a stack of newspapers. Leo didn't even have to pick them up to see the headline on the top one, a large photo of himself. In the picture, he was trying to cover his face with his hand, but not quite succeeding, a look of helpless frustration on his face. There are at least 30 more newspapers just like it. Just then he heard soft footsteps behind him. "Leo, why do you cover your face in photos?" Tilly appeared at his side, holding 2 cups of steaming black tea. She saw him looking at the newspapers and tilted her head curiously. Leo gave an awkward laugh and slowly took the tea she offered. "Who knows? Maybe he was in a bad mood that day. I can't exactly say I was trying to hide from you, can I?" "Oh, is that so?" Tilly picked up a newspaper and seriously analyzed his pose in the photo. "It feels like you didn't want your face to be in the paper. You must have been hiding from someone, right?" "Of course not." Leo's face hardened as he said righteously, "I have nothing to hide. Who would I be hiding from?" Tilly looked at his tense expression and tilted her head again. "Really? Of course." Leo nodded immediately. The room fell silent for a moment. Tilly gazed at Leo's face and smiled faintly. "Let's not talk about that for now." Leo tried to change the subject. "No, get it back on track." He looked at Tilly, confused. "You brought me here because you had something to show me, right?" "Oh, right." Tilly smiled. "I got so caught up in talking to you, I almost forgot." She leaned over and rummaged in a drawer of the desk for a moment. Then, she handed Leo an old notebook. "This is..." The moment Leo touched it, an item notification popped up. "Fragment of Ursula's notebook, tome, danger level. Contains the early research of the mage Ursula on the divine, including a great deal of hidden and malevolent black magic knowledge. It is a gateway to madness. Warning, in-depth study is not advised. Doing so will result in a -20 sanity loss and will trigger continuous sanity checks." Seeing the serious look on Leo's face, Tilly explained, "This is the notebook my teacher used to carry with her everywhere. She began researching the divine more than a decade ago. She secretly established a hidden research project behind the elders' backs. The project goal was to search for traces of gods all over the world. My teacher always believed it was the only way to solve the millennia-old predicament of mages, which is now the Divine Research Institute on that island. Leo asked. That's right, Tilly nodded. 6 months ago, she and I rushed here as soon as we could and immediately began studying the sea god of Hegra's town. But the institute on the island is just one of many. Leo stared at the notebook in his hands, unsure if he should open it. The system had already flagged it as dangerous. As curious as he was, he had to weigh whether his sanity could withstand that level of psychic damage. Tilly thought he was hesitant to get involved in the Order's secrets and smiled. It's all right. If it's you, I'm willing to share anything. And I truly hope you'll join me on this path to witness the truth. Witness the truth? A small part of Leo was tempted. He took a deep breath, mentally preparing himself, and slowly opened the fragment of Ursula's notebook. I'll just take a quick look. I won't read too much, and I won't study the black magic inside. That should be fine, right? Leo opened the first page of the notebook, and a strong, forceful script met his eyes. The glory of the Magus Imperium is long past. The great deeds of our ancestors have been lost to the dusty annals of history. But when we study ancient history, it is not difficult to find that the mages of that era were the favored children of the gods, omnipotent, the closest of all to the truth. So what caused the fall of the mages? The sages of the Elder Council through the ages tell us it was the greed of the mages, their attempt to glimpse the truth of the world, that angered the gods and brought down their punishment. Since then, power has become a curse, and madness has accompanied every spellcaster throughout their lives. But I have no comment on this matter. Through my research of numerous historical texts, I have learned that the Archmagus Elchigar, revered by later generations as the god of magic, was active in that era. He truly touched the truth and ascended to godhood in the flesh. Yet he lived 1,000 years before the so-called Age of the Curse. Therefore, the truth of what happened back then is not as simple as the sages claim. Perhaps, to understand and even solve this affliction that has plagued our kind for so long, we must begin by studying the gods themselves. This was Master Ursula's foreword. The calm, reasoned narration painted a picture in Leo's mind of a wise mage who could see through anything. Come to think of it, he had a bit of a connection to this Master Ursula. The author of his Gould's Grimoire, the old headmaster of Blackwood Academy, Rudolph Gould, was actually Ursula's junior. He discovered this in the grimoire itself. In the old headmaster's personal notes, he would mention his senior from time to time, and it seemed they had been quite close. Leo continued to flip through the pages. He didn't dare read the specific research analyses, so he stuck to Ursula's personal notes. As he read, he felt things starting to take a dark turn. The further he got, the more chaotic Ursula's handwriting became, and the more unstable the emotions in her writing grew. What have I discovered? Gods can be killed? It seems gods are also divided into factions. Perhaps the only thing that can kill a god is another god. Tilly silently leaned in close, her black hair brushing against Leo's ear. As he turned the pages, her breathing grew more rapid. It seemed she, like her mentor Ursula, was becoming more and more excited. Leo reached the middle of the notebook. Ursula's handwriting was becoming twisted, and her tone was growing frenzied. Heavens! The power of a god. Perhaps it can be wielded by us? The key to the gate. The great key to the gate. If I could just touch it, if I could just open the gate of truth. All wishes, all conflicts can be resolved. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Time. I need more time. There's no time to waste. I can't wait any longer. Looking at the script, so distorted it was almost illegible, Leo felt a cold, creepy sensation. The calm, wise master Ursula from the beginning was completely gone. In her place was a raving lunatic, scribbling incoherent, meaningless nonsense. Leo flipped to the end of the notebook. All preparations are complete. The moment to witness the truth is at hand. I am ready. Leo frowned and turned to the very last page, only to see the leather of the back cover. Was that the last entry? Nothing after? He examined the fragment of Ursula's notebook carefully and suddenly noticed a detail. What he had just read wasn't the last page. There should have been one more, but the final page had been neatly torn out. Leo leaned closer to the notebook and saw the fine, frayed edge where the paper had been ripped away. Ursula tore out the last page? Why would she do that? After closing the notebook, Leo took a deep breath, feeling sweat bead on his forehead. Reading a book like this was incredibly stressful. He had been worried the whole time that his sanity would drop. The item description had said that in-depth study would trigger continuous sanity checks. In other words, you keep reading until you went insane. At that thought, Leo froze. Tilly has read the whole thing. He immediately looked up at her, so close beside him. Just as he expected, her whole body was trembling violently, her purple eyes filled with a fanatical, crazed light. Tilly. Leo looked at her with concern, but she just laughed excitedly. See, I was telling the truth. I really wasn't lying to you. She gripped Leo's hand so tightly it hurt his wrist. The key to the gate. The great key to the gate. Tilly's voice grew shrill with excitement. This is the key to touching the truth. Don't you see? My teacher must have done it, and I will do it too. Leo was stunned by this side of Tilly. She was even more terrifying now than she had been at the dining table. You need to calm down. Leo struggled to pull his hand free, then gripped hers tightly in return. Calm down? How can I calm down? She stared into his eyes, her face contorted. If I become a god, I can protect everyone I care about. I will never have to watch you leave again. Leo looked at this version of Tilly with nothing but a bitter smile on his heart. Her teacher's goal in seeking the truth was the truth itself. But Tilly was doing it for him. He sighed, looking into those eyes that seemed to burn with fire. Tilly, you're not thinking clearly right now. Where is your rationality as a researcher? Leo picked up the notebook and showed her the torn final page. Your teacher didn't necessarily touch the truth. She didn't necessarily become a god. Otherwise, why would she tear out this last page? Leo looked at her intently. Think about it. You're smart. You can figure it out. Your teacher, she probably failed. That's why she did this. She didn't want you to make the same mistake. But he never expected Tilly's entire demeanor to darken, plunging the room into a heavy silence that pressed down on Leo, making it hard to breathe. She stared at him, her eyes cold. Impossible. That's absolutely impossible. You're lying to me. You're trying to trick me. My teacher succeeded. She must have. And so I will succeed too. I will follow her. Leo, you have to come with me. Let's become gods together. The atmosphere in the room grew more and more terrifying. Leo gritted his teeth, pushing back against the pressure, and met her gaze without flinching. Fine. If that's what you believe, then tell me. Your teacher. Where is she now? The pressure in the air vanished in an instant. Tilly froze. Leo pressed on. Where is Ursula? Tilly's mouth opened, but she hesitated. My teacher. She disappeared 6 months ago. Your teacher disappeared. Leo stared at the momentarily lost-looking Tilly. This only confirmed his suspicions. The chaotic, twisted handwriting, the escalating madness, and the final page, torn out just as she was about to witness the so-called truth. Tilly's teacher, the great mage Ursula, had likely met a terrible fate. But Tilly quickly recovered. She completely rejected Leo's theory, her voice trembling with agitation as she repeated herself. It's not like that, she argued loudly. You're just overthinking things. It's because you're too weak, far too weak. You're too cautious. You can't comprehend things beyond your imagination. My teacher did it. She succeeded, and so I will succeed too. Seeing her in this obsessed state, Leo let out a bitter smile and gently placed his hands on her shoulders. I know this must be hard for you to accept. After all, your teacher was with you for so many years. She raised you, she taught you. But if she saw you like this, she would be heartbroken. She certainly wouldn't want you to follow in her footsteps. Her greatest fear was undoubtedly the unresolved trauma from 4 years ago. Even with the best gear and the strongest abilities, she had been powerless to do anything but watch him vanish. Leo felt a bit helpless about that himself. It wasn't the witch's fault. The final boss of the game had just been ridiculously hard. After he finished speaking, Tilly's mouth opened slightly, her purple pupils beginning to waver. It seemed his words were getting through, but her stubborn nature made her bite her lip, and she averted her gaze. Leo pressed his hands firmly on her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Tilly, so you see, isn't everything fine now? The sky hasn't fallen. You don't need to pursue power by messing with such dangerous things. Tilly lowered her eyes, seemingly lost in deep thought and conflict. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? This is exactly the life I've always wanted. To cast off all the heavy burdens, to never have to deal with those annoying colleagues from the Order again, to do what I love, whatever I want. And more importantly, Tilly slowly raised her head and gazed quietly at Leo's face. More importantly, she could be with him. The person she was now could never be the same complacent girl who was content with the status quo. Ever since she learned those things from her teacher, her view of the world had changed. The feelings of dread, anxiety, and unease never subsided. Tilly's face tightened. No. The calmness in her purple eyes was shattered, and they began to dart around frantically. You're lying to me. You must be lying. Tilly. Leo looked at her, stunned. She had been fine just a moment ago, clearly stabilizing. Why had she suddenly relapsed? He quickly held onto her trembling body, trying to patiently reason with her again. Tilly, snap out of it. You've gone off the deep end. The intense pressure made Leo's entire body tense. He gritted his teeth, using all his strength to resist it. He was growing more and more alarmed. The duration for persuasion/pacify wasn't over yet, but the skills seemed to be completely ineffective. Tilly's emotions were spinning further and further out of control. How was this possible? This wasn't the dreamlands. This wasn't a fake version of her. Leo watched as Tilly's body, right in front of him, distorted with that bizarre ripple effect once more. At the same time, her character information finally appeared before his eyes. Tilly race, human, spirit body, affinity, 100 corruption level, 100 danger level, 5 stars, extremely dangerous. Description, a desperate individual who clings to you. Obsessive, with strong self-destructive tendencies. Her main body has converted into a spirit form. The effects of persuasion/pacify skills are halved. Save point updating. Eternal love save point. The Witch's Seaside cabin reloads remaining. May 5th. Leo stared at the series of notifications, momentarily stunned. It wasn't the save point update that surprised him, but Tilly's character information. Spirit body? Tilly exists as a spirit body? Is she already dead? On a bizarre impulse, he subconsciously reached out and pinched Tilly's cheek. It was soft, delicate, and slightly warm, not the withered corpse he might have imagined. He could even hear her faint, shallow breathing so close to him. Tilly smiled sweetly. If you're done, then let's get going. I'll take you to witness the truth. We'll become gods together. Leo looked at her, exasperated. Take me to become a god? More like take me to go insane. He could only raise his hand again, making another attempt to soothe her. Tilly held his hand tight, rubbing her cheek against it, savoring his warmth with a look of longing. Her tone grew softer and softer, but the obsessive, fanatical idea in her words remained just as strong. Why does no one believe me? 6 months ago, I nearly touched it. I really saw it. The gate of truth slowly opened before us. Such magnificent power, wisdom that could penetrate all things, the ultimate source of everything in the universe. How beautiful, how exhilarating it was. Tilly murmured ceaselessly. As Leo listened, he picked up on something strange. You said, you and your teacher were together at the time. Tilly seemed lost in her own world. She closed her eyes comfortably and mumbled a reply. Yes, my teacher was right beside me. She has become a god. Leo's expression turned serious. Tilly, if you were there when your teacher disappeared, then tell me, what was she like at that moment? How did she become a god? What changes happened to her body? What form did the truth take? What exactly did you two see? He didn't need these abstract, grandiose descriptions. He just wanted to know what really happened in that institute 6 months ago. The truth is the truth. What other form could it have? Tilly's eyes snapped open, and she frowned slightly. Ignorance truly is the greatest barrier to communication. Even you can't help but fall into such mundane traps, saying such conventional things. Tilly, don't rush. I'll go on. Leo looked at her helplessly. Since going there was unavoidable, he would just have to take it one step at a time. He instinctively tried to pull his right hand away. But in the next second, a cold, hard sensation brushed against Tilly's cheek. She finally noticed something she had overlooked until now. Tilly grabbed Leo's right hand, her gaze fixed on his middle finger. A dark, old-fashioned ring was on it. Her purple eyes fixed on Leo with a chilling coldness. She enunciated each word. Was it Ophelia? Was it her? Leo gave a helpless smile. It's not as simple as you think. I can't take this ring off. There's nothing I can do. He looked down at the ring, at its item description. Can't take it off? Tilly sneered at Leo. I think you just don't want to. Leo smiled bitterly. It's true. Here, try to take it off yourself if you don't believe me. At his words, Tilly angrily grabbed the ring on his finger and yanked with all her might. The force was so great Leo felt like his finger was about to be torn off. Yet the ring remained on his hand, not budging an inch. How is that possible? How could such a thing exist? She said in disbelief. This time, a blue magical aura enveloped the ring. Tilly tried various methods to remove the object of her loathing. In the end, it still didn't move. Holy hell, what are you doing? Leo was horrified. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Tilly offered a gentle smile. I'll help you cut the finger off. Then you can take it off. Like hell, I'm not afraid. Leo stared at her, utterly exasperated. At least Helena was going to give him an anesthetic. This one was ready to start chopping on a whim. As Tilly drew closer, a powerful pressure enveloped Leo, weighing on him like a mountain. It crushed the air from his lungs and pinned him in place, rendering him immobile. "Be good, Leo." Tilly's smile loomed nearer. "I'll be quick. It won't hurt much." Leo struggled to lift his head, forcing himself to meet her eyes. "Tilly, do you have any idea what you're doing? Can't we just sit down and talk about this?" Facing the resistance and disgust in Leo's eyes, Tilly's resolve wavered for a split second. But her hesitation was fleeting. Leo's right hand shot up, completely against his will. A small smile played on Tilly's lips. "It's okay, just relax. The Order of Magical Arcanists has a very advanced technique." Just as the magical blade in her hand was raised high, a brilliant flash of blue light erupted. A massive surge of magical energy poured out of Leo's ring, colliding with Tilly's power. Tilly staggered back, her face a mask of astonishment. The force of the blast sent every object in the vicinity flying. The fire in the hearth was instantly extinguished, and the jars and vials on the shelves shattered. Leo looked down at the ring on his hand. This must have been the first time the magical shield from Eternal Love had activated. Well, for years apart, and you've only gotten crazier. Leo whipped his head around to see a translucent image of Ophelia appear at his side. She was studying Tilly with a smirk. "Become a god? You think you're worthy?" Ophelia let out a derisive laugh. "Does a person's intelligence decrease over time?" Leo couldn't help but smile at Ophelia. A few days apart, and her sharp tongue hadn't dulled in the slightest. If anything, she'd gotten better. Those two sentences were packed with venom. Tilly stared at her, her eyes blazing with murderous intent. "How did you get here? How did you evade my magical detection?" "Because I'm just that good," Ophelia said, crossing her arms with a smug look. Tilly narrowed her eyes, her gaze sweeping over Ophelia's translucent form, a thoughtful expression on her face. Leo was also observing Ophelia. The area around her was blurry and dark, with a few faint points of light that looked like torches. She must have descended into her ancestral tomb. So, it's magical communication. Tilly quickly figured it out, frowning as she analyzed it. But it's not a traditional transmission. The structure of the magical sigils is strange. It must be a new, partially self-created type of magic. The formula is based on. Leo wasn't particularly interested in how the ring worked. He looked at Ophelia. "How are things on your end?" Ophelia shook her head slightly. "It's a long story." Leo gave her a helpless smile. "About that." "It's a long story," she finished for him. Leo's smile grew even more awkward. Seeing the two of them bickering in a way that was actually quite intimate, Tilly finally couldn't stand it any longer. She stepped forward. Ophelia tried to raise a defense. The ring didn't just provide communication. It allowed her to briefly interact with Leo's reality. The dreamlands manifested, and a chaotic wave of air, debris, and rubble shot forward to meet the attack. But the power gap between them was too vast. Ophelia's counterattack was like a grain of sand trying to stop the tide. It was instantly annihilated by the overwhelming magical force. Even Ophelia's translucent body dissipated in the blast. The magical energy from the staff shot through her like a cannonball, not only passing through her body, but also piercing the cabin wall behind her, leaving a terrifying circular hole. A cold, damp sea breeze immediately seeped in, chilling Leo to the bone. Seeing this, a satisfied smile spread across Tilly's face. But the smile had barely formed when a blue light flashed, and Ophelia's translucent figure reappeared on Leo's other side. "Didn't see that coming, did you?" Ophelia's mocking smile was unchanged. "My real body isn't here. You can't kill me. You're like a ghost that won't leave." Tilly's expression grew darker and darker. Ophelia, on the other hand, couldn't stop smiling. It wasn't often she got to see this damned, which so utterly frustrated. She was enjoying this immensely. Flash after flash of brilliant blue light illuminated Tilly's face. She gripped her gem-studded staff. Her eyes narrowed as she stared at Ophelia's translucent form. Over the past while, she had unleashed countless attack spells, each one successfully obliterating the annoying figure. But every time the spell faded, Ophelia's image would reappear in the room like a persistent ghost, lingering near Leo, impossible to dispel. Seeing this, Ophelia's smile grew wider. "Are you really that stubborn?" Tilly's expression shifted, but she suddenly fell silent. "What? Cat got your tongue?" He shot her a weary glance, thinking to himself, if she keeps provoking her like this, Tilly's going to completely lose it. Tilly's corruption was already maxed out, and she was incredibly powerful. The consequences of enraging her would be terrifying. Go ahead and take her side, Ophelia grumbled. But she knew the gravity of the situation and finally ceased her taunt attacks. In a heavy silence, Tilly looked at them both and suddenly broke into an inscrutable smile. Ophelia frowned. What are you trying to say? Tilly smiled faintly, having already devised a solution. So what if it had immense power? This was her turf, and Leo was in her hands. She had all the time in the world to drain the ring's energy dry. Her phantom was quickly destroyed, only to reappear and be destroyed again in an endless cycle. Leo looked up at the magic jewels. They were inscribed with some kind of powerful magic, and they were on a semi-automatic attack mode. The witch didn't even have to lift a finger. She had time to tidy up her messy alchemy station and sip her tea while enjoying the sight of Ophelia's increasingly furious expressions as she was repeatedly vaporized. You, this, damn, witch. Leo gave an awkward smile. They do. Ophelia snorted. Aren't those the ones you gave her back then? Tilly rested her chin on her hand and blinked, feigning confusion. But Ophelia froze. Tilly then took out a small, old cloth bag and, like a magician pulling rabbit from a hat, began to produce all sorts of wondrous items. Ophelia looked ready to explode. Every single item she was showing off was a priceless treasure. Yet back then, Leo had given them all to this damned witch without a second thought. Leo could only offer a bitter, helpless smile. He just wanted to beat the game. Was being a power gamer a crime? He tried to placate her. I'll give you more things from now on. But Ophelia wasn't listening anymore. It wasn't the treasures she cared about. Why are you blaming him? Tilly tilted her head, a look of confusion on her face. If these treasures were given to you, would you even know how to use them? 3 rhetorical questions, each one a dagger to Ophelia's heart. Leo blinked, not sure what new drama this was. Back then, I was nowhere near as powerful as I am now. And because of my status, there were many ways I couldn't help you. Back then, Tilly blinked with wide, innocent eyes. But you're not that strong now, either. Shut up, witch. Ophelia shot her an impatient glare. Faced with Ophelia's counterattack, Tilly's eyes flashed with panic. Selfish. Selfish? Listening to her muttering, Leo suddenly froze. Did she just say the ritual for godhood was in the notes? Seeing Tilly grow more agitated, Ophelia's lips curled into a slight smile. She decided to press her advantage. No, Tilly wouldn't allow anyone to question her path to divinity. Who says I don't believe it? It is unquestionable. I will become a god. The jab at her family's origins didn't seem to bother Ophelia in the slightest. She just smiled. What kind of monsters my family might be has nothing to do with you. I'd advise you to mind your own business. You want to become a god? Perhaps you should contact Bedlam Asylum in New Haven first. They have plenty of lunatics there who want to be gods. You'd fit right in. I know the director. I can get you a reservation for a premium room with a lovely view. Listening to Ophelia's merciless volley, Leo almost laughed but managed to restrain himself. Her silver tongue was getting sharper by the day. She must have been bored out of her mind, cooped up in that ancestral tomb. Finally, seeing the twisted expression on Tilly's face, Ophelia gave a triumphant, self-satisfied smirk. Did you hear that, you selfish little ghoul? If you want to become a god, go do it yourself. Stop trying to abduct my Leo. Tilly let out a cold laugh. Selfish? Don't act like you're so innocent. She narrowed her eyes, her gaze falling on the ring in Leo's hand. Leo, she's monitoring you. Don't you realize that? This isn't monitoring. I'm protecting him. Ophelia immediately shot back. Tilly snorted. Protecting? With me here, does he need protecting? With you here, his fingers were about to get chopped off. And wasn't that because of you? Ah, you witch. It's impossible to have a conversation with you. You reptilian throwback from the House of Wigner. Did you think I wanted to talk to you? Hold on. Hold on. Leo couldn't stay seated any longer. They'd been at it from noon till night, and he was getting hungry. Both their gazes snapped to him, the killing intent not quite dissipated, making Leo shiver. Hearing that Leo was willing to go with her, Tilly's expression softened. Her goal, after all, was to get him to the Institute on the island. This was halfway to a success. But Ophelia was still clearly displeased. That island is bound to be dangerous, and it involves matters of divinity. If something happens to you, how could you possibly escape? And, she grumbled, that irritating old man sent me so far away. It would take me days to get to you. By the time I found you, your body would probably be cold. I'm not that easy to kill, Leo said, smiling at her. We've even been through an outer god's manifestation. Ophelia's lips tightened. She clearly didn't buy his attempt to placate her. The atmosphere grew silent again. Just then, Tilly spoke up. A teleportation spell. Teleportation? Ophelia frowned at her. But I don't know how. Do you have a mage in your retinue? Tilly asked. I do. Ophelia nodded, glancing toward a spot beside her. The air next to her was blurry and indistinct, but Leo guessed she was talking about Carolyn. But Ophelia hesitated. She doesn't know teleportation magic. Huh. Useless, Tilly commented flatly. Ophelia shot her a cold look. Leo wasn't surprised by their exchange. Teleportation, a spell that sounded like standard, orthodox magic to him, was something you'd really only see within the Order of Magical Arcanists. The casters outside the Order mostly dabbled in sinister, evil-looking dark magic like the hypnosis Carolyn was so good at, or that bizarre hex that made a person's body crawl with maggots. It doesn't matter if she doesn't know it, Tilly said. A long-range teleportation like this consumes an astronomical amount of magical energy. As long as you have enough Ethereum crystals, I can teach your caster. I'll give her a simple magic circle that achieves the same effect. Fine, Ophelia agreed decisively. Tilly looked at her, a skeptical expression returning. Is she a proper caster? Can she even match the level of one of our apprentices? I don't need her to hold vast reserves of magic, but she must have magical talent. She has to be able to resonate with the vibrations of the circles, comprehend the complex structure of magical sigils, and leverage the echoes of miracles from beyond the material world. Don't worry, she's more than capable, Ophelia said, instinctively glancing at Carolyn beside her. Carolyn's magical aptitude was naturally high. It was a shame her family had fallen on hard times. As the daughter of a noble house, she could no longer afford the exorbitant costs of magical education. Very well, Tilly said, looking at her. In that case, your caster can bring you here. A slow smile spread across her face. Now you can rest easy, right? You can entrust Leo to me now, can't you? Ophelia stared back at her silently, not answering. Rest easy my ass. Just as the mood turned tense and sullen again, a soft knock came from the door. Leo glanced out the window and saw several people in mage robes. They had to be Tilly's subordinates. Tilly looked outside and sighed deeply. All right, we'll talk about the lesson tomorrow. She rubbed her temples, looking weary. That's enough for today. I have a lot to deal with. I'm busy. As she spoke, she took Leo's hand. Before Ophelia could even react, a blue magic circle flared to life. Tilly gave a live demonstration of teleportation magic. In an instant, Leo was whisked back to the front of the mansion on the hill. The area was now brightly lit, with several apprentices using illumination spells to patrol the coastline. It's getting late. Get some rest, Tilly said, her face even more fatigued. She sighed again. There's still so much to do within the order, and I have to study my teacher's notes. I'll see you tomorrow. You get some rest, too. Remember to sleep, Leo told her. Tilly offered a faint, gentle smile, and then her figure vanished before his eyes. After she was gone, Leo stood on the hill, silently gazing out at the dark sea, as if waiting for something. A few moments later, Ophelia's translucent form reappeared in front of him. Their eyes met in a silent, mutual understanding. Leo looked at Ophelia with a serious, profound gaze. Was she lying just now? What Leo was asking about, of course, wasn't the teleportation spell. It was about her so-called godhood. He needed to know her true motive, whether Tilly was telling the truth as she saw it or hiding some other conspiracy. This was precisely where Ophelia excelled. She was a master at reading micro-expressions, able to detect the subtlest shifts in human emotion. In other words, Ophelia was a human lie detector. Hearing Ophelia's conclusion, Leo's brow furrowed. Not lying. At the very least, she genuinely believes the ritual is correct and that her teacher truly succeeded. Ophelia pursed her lips. That which is getting crazier and crazier. She's probably hallucinating from her madness, Ophelia said with a mocking expression. That woman has clearly fried her brain studying magic. That's the only way she could come up with such an idea. That's a possibility. Leo fell into thought. Tilly's corruption level was already at 100. The fact that she could speak and laugh with him so normally was, in itself, abnormal. She might have descended into madness long ago. And you still want to go to that island with that crazy witch. Ophelia glanced at Leo, her voice laced with a haunting sigh. You're willing to brave the danger to go with her. You really care about her, don't you? Leo blinked innocently, offering an explanation, or rather, an excuse. It's not what you think. This is my thirst for the truth. Ophelia rolled her eyes at him. Keep telling yourself that. As she spoke, her gaze shifted elsewhere. Leo suddenly noticed that the atmosphere around her seemed chaotic. Flames flickered erratically, and she was directing people around her busying herself with something. Leo waited quietly. After Ophelia finished, she glanced back at him. You'd better be careful. Don't let that witch fool you. As soon as Carolyn learns that teleportation circle, I'm coming to find you. Leo immediately grumbled to himself. Today you're just a phantom, and you still fought with Tilly like that. If you actually showed up in person, I can't even imagine the scene. In the end, he could only offer a helpless smile and change the subject. The words had barely left his mouth when he heard a terrifying monster's roar from her side. The environment around Ophelia suddenly began to shake violently. What's happening? Leo frowned. What's going on over there? It's nothing. Ophelia waved a dismissive hand. The old ancestor decided to wake up from his nap. Seeing Leo's worried and questioning gaze, Ophelia explained. A group of grave robbers, quite skilled too, were the ones who woke him up. But it's fine now, they've been dealt with. Grave robbers? Leo frowned, thinking, and then something clicked. Ophelia nodded. They all used magic, a type I haven't seen much of. How did you know? Seeing her confused look, Leo told her about Ursula's divine research project. In that case, it must be them. Ophelia trailed off. Then her eyes narrowed, a cold light glinting within them. The Order of Magical Arcanists. Those lawless bastards daring to disturb our ancestral tomb. Hold on. Leo quickly interjected. The mages sent by the Order must have been powerful. How did you deal with them? He was especially curious about this. Ophelia's shadow guards were strong, but the Order's mages were no pushovers. At the mention of this, a cryptic smile played on Ophelia's lips. It was nothing. I just used a little trick. Looking at Ophelia's cunning expression, Leo silently gave her a thumbs up. Ophelia's smile turned sinister. They brought this on themselves, meddling with my family's ancestors for their research. He's been asleep for hundreds of years. He must be famished. I've despised those people from the Order of Magical Arcanists for a long time. They deserve to die. Seeing Ophelia's increasingly vicious smile, Leo thought to himself that Tilly, consumed with thoughts of the island, would never go there. Besides, he had a feeling that if Tilly was tricked into fighting Ophelia's ancestor, she wouldn't necessarily lose. She might even come out on top. Seeing Leo's worried expression, Ophelia smiled reassuringly. Don't worry. My father told me in his letter that once our ancestor has had his fill, he'll go back to sleep. It's not the first time something like this has happened. All we need is to provide a sufficient offering. A sufficient offering? Leo frowned. That's not you, is it? At the same time, he realized this must be the greatest secret of the Wigner royal family, their ultimate trump card. An immortal, monstrous ancestor, the guardian of their house. Even if this Antaeus wasn't a true god, had to be a demigod-level entity, maybe even a leader among the Night Gaunts, a terrifying king of nightmares. Ophelia looked at Leo. It's getting late. I still have a lot to deal with here. You should go back and rest. Leo nodded. Thinking of her still inside the tomb, he added, Be careful. Don't worry about me. How could I not worry? Ophelia's gaze suddenly turned mournful. Just thinking about that which being near you, I can't sleep properly. Leo put on an innocent expression. See, you're jumping to conclusions again. I haven't done anything. I'm completely blameless. Ophelia narrowed her eyes suspiciously, studying his micro-expressions. Really? Leo nodded firmly. Really? Seeing his serious look, a half-smile played on Ophelia's face. But just because you're blameless now doesn't mean you'll stay that way. Her phantom image instantly appeared at his side. Ophelia leaned close to his ear, whispering with a playful smile. But that's all right. Luckily, I have this ring. You'd better remember. I'm watching you. Leo was left alone on the hill. He gazed out at the endless, dark sea as a cold wind swept over him, making him shiver. The nights in this seaside town were exceptionally cold. Leo wrapped his arms around himself and was about to head back toward the mansion. Suddenly, a strange sound came from the darkness ahead. Leo looked over. Evelyn's figure gradually emerged from the shadows. Huh, Professor Evelyn? What are you doing here? Of course I'm here. Evelyn shot him an exasperated look. I've been looking for you all day. Helena was worried sick. I didn't expect you to just show up on your own. Sorry, Professor. Leo offered an apologetic smile. He truly was moved. Especially after such an insane day, his mind had been on high alert, and he was mentally and physically exhausted. He never expected to come back and be greeted by the gentle and thoughtful Professor Evelyn. Leo was so touched he could have cried. You brat, what are you looking at me so mushily for? It's creepy, Evelyn grumbled, but the corners of her mouth turned up involuntarily. They walked back to the mansion courtyard together. Seeing Leo's silly grin, Evelyn asked, Since you say I'm the best, then I have to ask, What exactly is so great about me? Leo stopped, looking at her without blinking. Everything about you is great, Professor. You're the absolute best. Evelyn stopped too, her smile growing softer. She playfully ruffled his hair. Such a sweet talker. You really know how to flatter someone. Aren't you afraid that control freak who's supposedly watching you every second will hear you? Evelyn shot him a look of disbelief. You don't believe me? Seeing her expression, Leo decided to conduct an experiment. He looked out into the darkness around the mansion and asked softly, Ophelia, were you just spying on me? A moment passed. The surroundings were dead silent, except for the distant sound of waves. See, Professor. Leo had just turned back to smile at Evelyn when a soft, cool kiss landed on his lips. It was a light peck, and it was over as quickly as it began. Leo stared at Evelyn, who looked perfectly composed despite having just stolen a kiss out of nowhere. His eyes widened. Professor, what was that? Evelyn giggled, not giving him a chance to speak as she stepped forward and opened the mansion door. The fire in the hearth crackled softly. The room was warm and cozy. Helena was curled up on the sofa in front of the fireplace, fast asleep. Perhaps startled by their voices, Helena stirred restlessly, murmuring, Brother. Leo tiptoed over, gently lifted her small body into his arms, carried her to her room, and tucked her in. Hagerstown, another overcast morning. Leo looked out the window. The sea breeze carried a light rain that pattered against the glass. The wind howled outside, signaling a coming storm. The sound woke Helena, who was sleeping peacefully against him. She opened her eyes slightly. Brother, what's wrong? Nothing. Leo smiled and stroked her head. Go back to sleep. Oh, Helena murmured, shifting into a more comfortable position on Leo's lap. In contrast to the miserable weather outside, the atmosphere in the room was warm and cozy. The fire in the hearth burned brightly. Leo read quietly by its light, with Helena beside him, though she'd quickly grown bored and fallen asleep on him. It had been 5 days since they arrived in the small town. During this time, Tilly had been busy planning the trip to the island and rarely had time to see Leo. With nothing else to do, he decided to pass the time by studying magic. The deep blue light reflected on his face, its glow momentarily blinding, which also startled Helena awake. Is brother finally going to do magic? She asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Chill. Leo gestured for her to be quiet. Helena immediately fell silent. She curled up in Leo's arms, her eyes fixed on the glowing Ethereum crystal. Under Helena's expectant gaze, Leo slowly recited the long, arcane incantation. As he finished, a barely perceptible disturbance rippled through the air. The water in the glass on the table began to diminish, as if someone were secretly taking sips from it. Looking at the subtle change, Helena blinked in confusion. Brother, is that it? Leo nodded. Yep, this spell is called water mist. It's over now. Oh, Helena's expression was one of slight disappointment. She had watched her brother study for days and thought it would be some incredible spell. Not this. Seeing her obvious disappointment, Leo gave a helpless smile. She probably didn't realize that for someone without magical talent, even this was pushing the limits. And she certainly couldn't have guessed his reason for learning this spell first. That's... Helena's eyes widened with tension at the sight of the vials. Leo motioned for her to stay calm. Then, to her astonishment, he cast water mist again. The liquid in the vials of suppression serum vanished completely, dispersing into the air. Soon, a thick fog that could lower corruption levels filled the room. Helena looked at the mist, shrinking back anxiously. She didn't like the smell of the serum. Leo, however, looked relieved. The experiment was a success. This had been his goal all along. With this trick, he would never have to risk smashing a vial in someone's face again. Truth be told, he'd borrowed the idea from the great fog of New Haven. Evelyn appeared in the room instantly. She frowned at the lingering mist. What's that smell? Leo, what are you doing? Professor, could you maybe use the front door? You scared me. Leo looked at her helplessly. Seeing her rain-drenched hair, he handed her a towel. What do you know? Experts always use the window. Evelyn grumbled, taking the towel and drying her hair. It's not all my doing. I have my brilliant professor to thank for her guidance, Leo said with a smile. He wasn't just flattering her. Evelyn had genuinely given him many ideas. Don't get too cocky, Evelyn laughed. If it were me, I would have approached this from another angle, one better suited to our blood magic combat style. Leo paused. You have a better idea, Professor? Evelyn crossed her arms, lifted her chin, and smiled smugly. If you want to learn, you have to beg me. If you satisfy your teacher, then I'll teach you. Leo looked at her silently. If Professor Evelyn had a tail, it would definitely be twitching with pride right now. So he put on an exceptionally sycophantic expression. Professor Evelyn is the best teacher in the world. Look at your student, so eager to learn, so passionate about his studies. You wouldn't disappoint him, would you? Evelyn huffed. Don't think your sweet talk will work on me again. It's not enough. So Leo grinned and ushered her to the sofa. How about I give you a shoulder rub? Before she could refuse, Leo's hands were already at work, enthusiastically kneading her shoulders. Evelyn shot him a suspicious look. How do you miss and end up there while giving a shoulder rub? At the same time, a grim chill emanated from a corner of the room, making both of them shiver. Helena was staring daggers at them, twisting the head of her doll another full circle. Evelyn gave Leo an exasperated glare. All right, I wasn't really going to make it hard for you. Stop with the brown nosing. She stood up, walked back to the table, and picked up the Ethereum crystal inscribed with water mist. Then she smiled at Leo. Watch closely. After Evelyn spoke, a crimson light erupted from her hand. Leo saw the Ethereum crystal light up in tandem with her blood magic. Then, a cloud of blood mist exploded around Evelyn. Driven by Evelyn's blood magic, the dense swarm of blood-red needles shot forward. After completing the combination technique, Evelyn smiled at Leo. Well, Leo stared at the perforated wall and nodded silently. She'd managed to create a combo of blood magic, crystal magic, and alchemy. If he could master this move, he wouldn't need to get close to anyone ever again. Seeing Leo's awestruck expression, Evelyn's smile grew wider with pride. Seeing her practically floating with smugness, Leo laughed along with her. But, Professor, how did you pull off that projectile trick? It's simple, like this and this and that and that. And there you have it. Under her guidance, Leo began to train his control over blood magic. But because it used so much blood, he soon became dizzy and pale. Evelyn watched his face grow paler and shook her head. It's not good for a young man to be so drained. You should replenish yourself more often. But Leo was fired up. He kept flinging blood magic at the wall without pause. He grew paler and paler. Brother, Helena looked at Leo's face with concern. You should rest. You've been shooting for a while now. Her choice of words nearly made Leo choke on his own spit. He finally stopped his training. Evelyn agreed. There's no need to rush. It takes more than a day to become as skilled as I am. After all, I've been using blood magic for more years than I can count. Leo nodded silently and sat back down on the sofa. Evelyn looked at him and asked curiously, By the way, why don't you ask your little witch friend for help with magic? She's the real expert in this field, isn't she? Leo smiled at her. She's not nearly as good a teacher as you are, Professor Evelyn. Oh, is that so? Evelyn looked skeptical, assuming Leo was just flattering her again. But Leo just nodded seriously. Some people were brilliant students, but terrible teachers. They were two different skills. Professor Evelyn was a professor at Blackwood Academy and their class's acting advisor. When it came to teaching, especially the fundamentals, she was the best. Putting magic practice aside, Leo asked Evelyn what news she had gathered. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. It was quite lively down by the coast today. Lively? Evelyn glanced out the window, slowly closing it tight before lowering her voice. It was quiet the last few days, but today a bunch of mages suddenly burst out from the island, trying to force their way through. But they were all killed by Tilly's people. So they finally couldn't take it anymore? Leo thought. The president's people had been blockaded on the island by Tilly for a full 6 months. After that long, their supplies must have run out. But this time, something felt off. Evelyn added with a frown. A lot of mages tried to cross over, but none of them were as strong as the one we saw on our first day. Leo pondered this. Tilly had told him there were 2 magical barriers, one covering the entire island and another over the town. The barriers she had set were ancient and powerful, requiring a massive amount of Ethereum crystals to maintain daily. Even someone like the president would have to think twice before trying to break through. Escape is the right word, Evelyn said grimly. Something major must have happened on that island. They were willing to take such a risk to get out. As they were thinking, a noisy commotion erupted outside the mansion. Leo and Evelyn exchanged a look. Had another mage escaped? He immediately stood up, called for Helena, and the 3 of them went outside. Down the hill, several of Tilly's followers had a soaking wet mage pinned to the ground. As Leo approached, a flash of magical light appeared, and Tilly's figure materialized. Their eyes met, and she gave him a nod. What happened? Leo asked, walking toward her. I just got here myself. Tilly rubbed her tired eyes. Vice President. One of the mages called out to Tilly. This man claims to have important intelligence. He says he'll only speak to you. Oh, Tilly looked down at the pathetic-looking mage. His staff was broken, and his face was pale from the water. He was trembling violently. Vice President, Lady Tilly, the captive mage cried out, his voice hoarse. Don't kill me. I can be useful to you. Please don't kill me. Tilly looked at him, her expression unreadable. First, tell me what you know. Then I'll decide whether to kill you. The captive mage nodded frantically. Yes. Tilly stared at him. Speak. What happened on the island? Why are you trying to escape? The captive mage shuddered, recalling the events on the island. His face contorted in terror. The president has gone mad. He's insane. He wants to eat us. Tilly froze. Eat you? What does that mean? But the captive mage seemed to have lost all reason, pleading in a low, desperate voice. Please save us. We were all deceived by the president. We're not his followers. We truly have no intention of opposing you. As the captive mage was brought to the shore, more and more members of the Order of Magical Arcanists gathered around. Leo did a quick scan. About 30 mages had assembled. The town was usually empty, so he'd never seen them all together like this. It was likely because the bay was a semicircular cove, and they were spread out along the coast to prevent the president's people from sneaking out. Seeing the captive's emotional state spiraling out of control, Tilly's expression darkened. A palpable pressure began to emanate from her. The captive mage shuddered. Right. Vice President. I'll tell you now. Hearing this, Leo found the image horrifying. They had eaten nothing but potatoes for 3 months. Unexpectedly, Evelyn, standing beside him, muttered under her breath. Potatoes are pretty good, aren't they? Leo couldn't help but chuckle. Evelyn looked at him, confused. Aren't they? The big meals you usually take me to, the ones with potatoes are always delicious. Leo looked at her, amused. Even you would get sick of them after 3 straight months. Professor Evelyn had only recently been introduced to human food. She probably hadn't yet experienced the feeling of getting tired of eating the same thing. Their quiet exchange drew the attention of the others. Tilly shot Evelyn an impassive glance. Evelyn fell silent. The captive mage continued his story. After their failed escape attempts, all the mages could do was place their hopes in the president's research, praying he could defeat the vice president and lead them to freedom. But half a year passed with no results, and the atmosphere among the president's faction grew increasingly oppressive and silent. Until, 1 month ago, a disheveled president burst out of the underground research institute, ecstatic. He announced that he was on the verge of success, that he had heard a divine oracle, and would soon possess the power of God. The mages were, of course, equally thrilled. But the president said his research required one final step, one he couldn't complete alone. He needed a little help. 10 of the Order's most powerful mages volunteered to be his assistants and entered the sealed research institute. But they never came out. Many of the mages outside found this strange. Before, only the president had been allowed to enter that top-secret area. Now he was letting others in, and after that, even stranger things began to happen. The island itself started to change in bizarre ways. The ecosystem was altered, and more crazed monsters began to appear. And, at night, a colossal, terrifying creature would emerge from the island's forests. It was extremely dangerous. Fights broke out frequently on the island, and the number of mages began to dwindle. Finally, left with no other choice, they broke into the research institute to seek the president's help. But when they finally found him, they were horrified to discover what had happened to their colleagues. When we found the president, he was crouched over a pile of corpses, frantically gnawing on flesh and blood. The captive mage's expression grew more terrified. It turned out the president. He was the monster that came out at night. The 10 assistants from before, the other mages who disappeared on the island, even our elder. He ate them all. The president has lost his mind, but his power is immense. If Elder Riles hadn't sacrificed himself in a final, desperate gambit, the rest of us would never have escaped. The captive mage looked at Tilly, his expression pleading. That's everything I know, Lady Tilly. Please, you must help us. My friends are still on the island. After he finished, the surrounding mages looked utterly shocked. Elder Marjorie stepped forward. She looked from the pleading mage to Tilly, her expression serious and questioning. Lock him up in the town, Tilly said with a dismissive wave of her hand. The church is still watching us, and the Order's situation is precarious. Once we deal with the president and his supporters, we can end this meaningless internal conflict. Understood. Elder Marjorie nodded. Then she looked at Leo's group, her tone hesitant. Tilly, are you bringing your friends to the island as well? Tilly raised an eyebrow. Of course. But Elder Marjorie glanced at Leo again, frowning slightly. The Divine Research Institute is a top secret of the Order. Though they are your friends, they are still outsiders. Allow me to correct you, Elder Marjorie. Tilly looked toward Leo, a smile playing on her lips. He is not an outsider. In fact, this whole trip was for him. If it didn't go with her, what was the point? Elder Marjorie looked up in surprise. Seeing the way their eyes met, she frowned even more suspiciously. Her mind raced, trying to recall information about this Leo. A young man, perhaps an alchemist or a mystic, and since this trip involved local legends and ancient gods, perhaps Tilly had her reasons? Marjorie could only assume as much. After all, Tilly was usually composed and reliable. She never got distracted by irrelevant matters. If that's the case, then I understand. I'll go with Elder Rollins and the others to prepare for landing. Tilly nodded slightly, then quietly walked over to Leo. As Tilly slowly approached, Leo asked, "When are you planning to go to the island?" "There's no time to waste." Tilly looked at the mages scattering to their tasks. "We'll land before noon today, at the latest." Leo nodded, his gaze fixed on the small island in the sea. As the morning temperature rose, some of the sea mist had cleared, and the island's silhouette was now visible. "And you still believe that by studying the corpse of a god, you can touch the truth?" "I don't," Leo asked, puzzled. "What is it?" Tilly blinked slyly and leaned close to Leo's ear. "You'll know when we get there." Leo turned to her. "The key." Tilly nodded gently. A moment later, she glanced down at the ring on Leo's finger. This time, however, she didn't get angry. Instead, a mocking smile appeared on her face. "She's busy on her end, too. She can't keep an eye on me every second," Leo said with a weary smile. He really didn't want to continue this conversation. "Oh." Tilly was still smiling, but the smile was fading. "That fifth princess from the House of Wigner. She has no real power herself, so she resorts to these insidious, despicable tricks to trap you. How vile." Leo subconsciously glanced at the ring, praying she wouldn't pop up at this critical moment. After her taunt, Tilly looked at Leo with a smile. "But don't worry. Once we have infinite power, we can throw this ring away." "I hope so," was all Leo could say. Tilly continued to smile. "Then, we can do whatever we want. That annoying woman who imprisoned and monitored you. I can even kill her for you." "Let's not do that," Leo thought. Seeing Leo's silence, Tilly tilted her head. "What, you don't want me to?" Leo forced a laugh. "Once we become gods, our perspective will be on a whole other level. Why would we still be concerned with such trivial matters?" "True." Tilly nodded lightly. Leo's heart tightened. Tilly smiled. "In your heart, is her place higher than mine?" After she asked the question, Leo felt the air around them freeze. This was a textbook conversational minefield. Should he go for the self-preservation route and deny it outright? "No, you're the more important one to me." Or channel his inner player and give a smooth smile? "You're both my wings." It was a question worth pondering. But just as he was about to speak, a slender, pale finger pressed against his lips. "Don't say it. I already know." Leo was taken aback. Tilly lowered her gaze, her voice barely a whisper. "Of course I'm more important. Vice President Tilly." Just then, a few mages came to find her. The preparations for landing must have been completed. Tilly no longer dwelled on her previous question. She looked at the small island, now more visible, her eyes filled with impatience. Leo wiped a cold sweat from his brow, breathing a silent sigh of relief. "You blasphemous devils! You damned black wizards!" A crazed houndsman stood at a street corner, fearlessly screaming curses at the mages of the Order. Some of the mages looked displeased, some scoffed, and others looked questioningly at Elder Marjorie. Marjorie nodded and walked over to Tilly, who was staring out at the island. "There are still many test subjects in the Institute. These townspeople with their impure blood are useless now, aren't they?" Tilly didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed solely on the small island, or rather, the research institute upon it. Marjorie sighed helplessly and turned back to the mages. She drew a finger across her own neck, a clear gesture to kill. "All of them." The mages nodded slightly. 2 hours later, 6 small boats slowly approached the edge of the island. The entire island was eerily quiet. After disembarking, the mages encountered no resistance. Seeing some of the mages consulting a map, Leo went over to take a look. The island was low on the west and high on the east. The Divine Research Institute was located on a cliff on the eastern side. To get there from here, they would have to cross a large, dense forest. They should be able to arrive before sunset. Once all the mages were on shore, the group began to move toward their destination. But as they ventured deeper into the island's interior, the environment became increasingly bizarre. Leo observed his surroundings. On the rocks, on the tree trunks, Everywhere he looked was covered in a dense layer of barnacles. It was enough to trigger anyone's trypophobia. Moreover, the air in the forest was thick with a foul, rotting stench, so pungent it was hard to even walk. What are these sea creatures doing growing on the island? Evelyn asked, pinching her nose and looking at Leo. The sea god's presence must have affected the ecosystem here, Leo mused, using his cane to smash open a hard barnacle. The flesh inside was rotten and dead. He remembered the townspeople saying the sea god would provide an inexhaustible supply of seafood. This must have been one of its abilities. Just then, Tilly, who had been scouting from the air, slowly descended. The moment she landed, the stench made her wrinkle her nose. Elder Marjorie, at her side, immediately cast a spell. After a brief incantation, a wall of air shielded the group from the foul odor, and everyone could finally breathe freely again. After rejoining the group, Tilly looked gravely into the depths of the forest. I sense magical fluctuations ahead. Everyone, be careful. The group proceeded with even more caution. It's the president's people, one of the mages whispered. Leo studied the monsters. They looked similar to the townspeople, only uglier, with more pronounced fish-like features. Their bodies were slick and hairless, their limbs webbed, their eyes bulged, and their gills quivered constantly. Their backs were covered in scales. At that moment, the half-human, half-fish monsters spotted the newly arrived group. They shrieked, making a hideous sound Leo couldn't understand. Then, a rustling sound filled the entire forest, and more monsters began to appear. Helena, at his side, was about to act, but Leo stopped her. Brother? Seeing her confused look, Leo shook his head. They don't need us. He gestured toward the mages. The moment the monsters appeared, the mages had unleashed a volley of spells. In an instant, blinding blue light filled the air. Leo saw a myriad of spells pour into the horde of monsters. Each wave of attack mowed them down like grass. The intense magical energy they generated even caused the entire forest to tremble. Helena's eyes widened. She had never seen such a spectacular display of so many mages casting spells in unison. It made Leo sigh. It was a good thing the Order of Magical Arcanists was small. Otherwise, their ambition to resurrect the Magus Imperium might have already succeeded. While the mages fought, Elder Marjorie circled high above, then landed with a grave expression, looking at Tilly. There are too many of them. It's not just what we see here. Beneath the sea around the island, a continuous stream of monsters is surfacing. She quickly scanned their surroundings. We're vulnerable to being surrounded here. We should find a new position. The other elder, Rollins, quickly agreed. But just as the two elders were about to ask for Tilly's decision, they noticed she was staring blankly at the fishmen, completely motionless. Vice President. The two elders called her name several times before Tilly finally snapped out of it. HM, you were saying a new position? Tilly paused. Yes, of course. Just do as Elder Marjorie says. The two elders exchanged a puzzled glance, wondering what she had been thinking, but they didn't press the matter and immediately began giving orders to the other mages. That moment, however, had not escaped Leo's notice. He frowned and walked over to Tilly. What were you thinking about just now? Why were you spacing out in a situation like this? Tilly looked at him blankly, then quickly said, It's nothing. Tilly, Leo stared into her eyes. What's wrong? Tilly's mouth opened, her expression hesitant for a moment. But in the end, she murmured, I think I've seen a similar scene before. That's why I was a little distracted. Seen a similar scene? Leo looked at her in surprise. What does that mean? Tilly closed her eyes tightly, as if trying hard to remember. I remember. Leo looked at her suspiciously. Did she really need to remember something like that? It had only happened 6 months ago. Watching Tilly, her eyes closed in deep thought, he suddenly realized something. Her memory was fragmented. Every time he tried to get her to explain how Ursula had become a god, what had happened that day, she was always vague, just repeating like a broken record. My teacher succeeded. I will succeed too. At first, he thought she was just changing the subject. But now, it seemed she simply couldn't remember. With this thought, Leo looked at her gravely. When you were on the island, especially the day Ursula disappeared, what exactly happened? Tell me. This is important. Tilly's eyes flew open, her purple gaze flickering with unease. I don't know. Leo watched her body tremble slightly and said soothingly, Don't rush. Take your time. You'll remember. I know. Tilly clutched her head, groaning in pain. I can't remember. Leo watched her intently. He noticed that as her emotions fluctuated wildly, her body began to ripple strangely again. He frowned. This wasn't the first or second time this had happened to Tilly. It seemed to be related to the nature of her body. Her attribute panel listed her as a spirit body. As he pondered this, Tilly's expression grew more pained. Her head throbbed, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember. Finally, her body swayed and she began to fall. Tilly. Leo quickly stepped forward to support her. Tilly leaned weakly against him, her eyes opening in a daze. I'm sorry, Leo, I really can't remember. Leo looked at her like this and sighed. You should rest. You're not in a good state right now. But Tilly immediately shook her head. But it's okay. It's okay. She suddenly gripped Leo's wrist, her eyes wide. I hear a faint calling in my mind. Leo could only help her to her feet. As if injected with adrenaline, Tilly quickly pulled away from him and looked excitedly toward the building on the cliff. That was the direction of the Divine Research Institute. We have to hurry. We can't waste any more time, she said, then walked eagerly and impatiently toward the two elders. Soon, under Tilly's command, the mages split into two groups. One would stay behind to fend off the monster attacks, while the other would advance quickly toward the Institute, aiming to get there before nightfall. Watching the hurried mages around him, Leo looked thoughtfully at Tilly's back. An idea was forming in his mind, but he couldn't quite articulate it. He looked again at the Divine Research Institute on the cliff. Leo's pace slowed. He looked silently at Helena and Evelyn. Brother? Helena could tell he had something to say. Leo glanced at Helena, then his gaze fell on Evelyn. Professor, he lowered his voice as much as possible. The magical barrier on the island is down now. Use the chaos to leave. Go back to where we landed and take one of the small boats. Leo. Evelyn quickly glanced around. Seeing that no one was paying attention, she quickly asked, You mean? Leo looked at her deeply. You're the only one whose movements are stealthy enough. Only you can do this. The church. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, clearly not fond of the organization. It's the only way, no matter how Leo thought about it. In a remote region of the Empire like this, the Order of the Holy Edict was the only official supernatural force available. They were the only ones who could suppress the Order of Magical Arcanists. More importantly, they weren't subordinate to the Brugge city government. They operated independently. As soon as they were told there were black wizards causing trouble in Hegra's town, they would descend like wolves that had smelled blood. But Evelyn looked at Leo with worry in her eyes. If I leave, what will you do here? What if that witch really tries to harm you? Will I be able to get back in time to save you? Professor. Leo looked at her intently. This is also about saving yourself. In a way, you're in more danger than I am. Evelyn froze. Leo silently reviewed the events of the past few days. He had a nagging feeling that if Tilly weren't still concerned about his feelings, not wanting to burn bridges with him just yet, she would have already killed Professor Evelyn. He had noticed a stark difference in how Tilly looked at Helena versus Evelyn. Perhaps because Helena had always acted as his little sister, their relationship truly was like that of siblings who relied on each other. So, when dealing with Helena, Tilly would occasionally show a hint of warmth, even remembering to get a gift for his sister when she got one for him. As for the professor, it was complete indifference, utter coldness. So Leo was afraid. He didn't know how powerful Tilly had become, but whatever she wanted to do, even if he was against it, she could likely do it with ease. He was now keenly aware that the moment they reached the Institute, the truth would be revealed. That would also be the most dangerous moment. The pretense would be dropped, and any semblance of warmth would vanish. Leo. Evelyn was still hesitant. But, no buts. Leo's gaze was firm. Professor, listen to me. Evelyn finally gave a silent nod. All right, I'll do as you say. Then, she glanced toward Tilly in the formation. Seeing her completely focused on the Divine Research Institute, paying no attention to them, Evelyn's figure flashed. She didn't leave openly in front of everyone. Instead, she charged into the ranks of the pursuing fishmen monsters. A short while later, under the cover of the chaotic battle and the dense forest, Evelyn's figure finally disappeared from Leo's sight. He let out a silent sigh of relief. Just then, he felt a warmth in his hand. Helena was holding it, looking back. Brother, we need to hurry. The monsters behind us are catching up. Leo squeezed her hand and asked gently, Are you scared, Helena? He wasn't talking about the fishmen, of course, and Helena understood his meaning. She smiled and shook her head. I'm not scared, as long as I'm with you. Brother, I'm not afraid of anything. Leo ruffled her pale golden hair and smiled warmly. Let's go. Let's go meet those demons and monsters. He took Helena's hand and, without hesitation, stepped onto the final path to the Divine Research Institute. When they reached the foot of the mountain, the group halted once more. The valley below was filled with the roars and shrieks of the monsters. While they didn't pose a significant threat to the mages, listening to them all day was becoming increasingly irritating. The mage's whispers earned them a displeased look from Elder Marjorie. She shot a stern glance around the group, and they fell silent again. Just then, the other elder, Rollins, looked at the sky and made a suggestion to Tilly. Didn't the mages on the island say the president is mostly active at night? It's getting late. Why don't we make camp here and set up a defensive formation? We can enter the Institute in the morning. It was a reasonable suggestion, but Tilly's expression immediately darkened. Wait for what? The Institute's entrance is right in front of us, and you're telling me we should wait until morning? But Vice President Tilly, Elder Rollins had never seen Tilly so agitated. In the past, on most matters big and small, she would at least listen to his and Marjorie's opinions. This time, she was completely dismissive. But what? A cold glint appeared in her purple eyes. Tilly sneered. If you're too scared to go in, then stay here and guard. I'll go myself. That's out of the question. How can we let you go alone? Elder Marjorie immediately refused. You are the only hope of our order. Whether we can finally break the curse, whether we can restore the glory of the Magus Imperium, it all depends on you. When Elder Marjorie finished this line that Tilly had heard 1,000 times before, Tilly's brow furrowed. In her eyes, there was not only annoyance, but also a faint, almost invisible trace of killing intent. Leo saw it all. He had been watching Tilly's transformation closely. From the base of the mountain to the top, her agitation had grown, as if something there was truly calling to her. All right, Rollins, and I will go up with you, Elder Marjorie said immediately. Then, she gave orders to the other mages. You wait here for the rear guard. I want every entrance and exit of the Institute sealed before nightfall. Don't be stingy with the Ethereum crystals. Understand? Yes, Elder, the mages replied in unison. Tilly and the two elders, with almost no rest, immediately headed for the Institute. Leo and Helena followed closely behind. Tilly, are they coming in too? Elder Rollins asked, glancing back at them. He had been wondering why these people were tagging along the whole time. They are Tilly's friends, Marjorie explained to Rollins. They are mystics, well-versed in the legends of local gods, and their expertise in alchemy can also be of some help to Tilly. Tilly said they are indispensable for this operation. Oh, is that so? Elder Rollins looked at the smiling Leo and nodded thoughtfully. Hearing Elder Marjorie's fabricated identity for him, Leo laughed to himself. He had no idea what Tilly had told her to make her imagination run so wild. But the last sentence was right on the money. He was indeed indispensable for this operation. After all, he was 100% certain it was all for him. Just before nightfall, Leo finally stepped inside the Divine Research Institute. As they entered the dark, cavernous hall, Tilly raised a hand, and a cluster of blue light floated up, illuminating the surrounding area. Leo looked around. The layout resembled a hospital, with countless small rooms lining both sides of a corridor that stretched out of sight. Elder Marjorie cautiously scouted the area. After sensing no danger, she returned to Tilly's side. Tilly, however, strode impatiently in one direction. Follow me. This way. My teachers and my research lab is on the second basement level. The group hurried to keep up. As they walked, the dark corridor gradually brightened. Leo looked up. This entire section was lit by magic. The deep blue glow cast an eerie pall over the silent hallway. As they went deeper, a heavy stench of blood began to emanate from the rooms on either side. Helena, standing guard by her brother's side, tensed up. Elder Marjorie was also on high alert, her staff raised, a spell at the ready. But after a few tense moments, the rooms remained eerily quiet. No unknown monsters burst out. Elder Rollins read the sign above one of the large rooms, and his brow relaxed slightly. This is where they keep the test subjects. He slowly pushed open the ajar door, revealing a gruesome scene of bloody, dismembered limbs. Leo looked inside. The large room was like a prison cell, with metal bars on the windows. The floor was littered with mangled corpses, looking as if they had been gnawed on by some creature. Judging by the state of decay, they hadn't been dead for long. It must have been the president, Elder Marjorie said with a frown. He ate these test subjects. It can't have been long ago. The group proceeded with even greater caution. Leo's eyes darted from side to side, a strange curiosity about the Order's projects growing within him. According to Tilly, after she was driven out by the Elder Council, she hadn't immediately gathered her followers for a counterattack. Some time had passed. The president, treating this place as his own, must have moved some of the Order's regular projects here, thinking they might be useful. Why have you stopped? Tilly, up ahead, paused impatiently. She was about to reprimand him, but saw it was Leo who was holding them up. Leo smiled at her. Tilly took a deep breath, suppressing her irritation, and patiently explained. This is the Order's Threshold project. Threshold? Of course, Tilly turned away. If we had succeeded, we wouldn't have risked studying a god. The group continued on, but Leo's mood grew heavier as he observed the Order's various research projects. Seeing these chilling experiments was no less disturbing than facing a terrifying monster. Seeing this, Leo was reminded of what Tilly had once told him about the factional struggles within the Order. According to her, her faction was known as the Academics. They dedicated themselves to studying the arcane arts, aiming to solve the Mage's curse, and were mostly buried in books, detached from worldly affairs. Speaking of which, Leo glanced at Elder Marjorie. She seemed to fit right in with that faction, her mind filled with the long-dead Magus Imperium. He wasn't sure why she had decided to follow Tilly. Perhaps she truly believed Tilly could change everything. Just as they reached the first basement level, the magical lights on the ceiling began to flicker like old fluorescent bulbs. Leo looked into the bottomless darkness around them and felt like he had walked onto the set of a horror movie. His vampiric bloodline kicked in. He grabbed Helena and instinctively dodged to the side. The two elders from the Order immediately raised their staves, conjuring two magical shields to block the surprise attack. As he and Helena scrambled to the ground, she looked up in shock. Brother, what is that? Leo looked back. The two elders had been sent flying by an immense force. In a flash of blue light, he saw what had attacked them, a massive tail covered in jagged, uneven scales. The moment she saw that massive tail, Tilly froze once more. Her lips parted slightly, as if she had just remembered something. Elder Marjorie quickly struck her staff against the floor, casting a sphere of illumination. The light spread out from her, pushing back the shadows and revealing a portion of the chamber. Leo scanned the area. In the center of the circular hall stood a massive orrery. Radiating from it were a dozen towering bookshelves, crammed with countless heavy tomes and files. This had to be the Institute's library or archives. The two elders, who had been sent sprawling by the impact, pushed themselves to their feet and exchanged a look of stunned disbelief. Was that the president? Leo. Helena rushed to his side, helping him up. Are you okay? Leo shook his head, his gaze immediately shifting to Tilly, who was standing nearby. She was lost in a daze again. Tilly. Leo walked over, his voice low. Did you remember something else? Tilly stared in the direction the creature had vanished, nodding thoughtfully. That's what the sea god looked like. When my teacher and I were studying it, I remember it had a massive, a fish tail, she finished. Leo's brow furrowed. But the sea god is long dead. The thing that just attacked us was probably the president. What baffled him even more was how the president had taken on the form of the sea god. Had he become a god himself? Was that what ascension meant? Growing a giant fish tail? Seemed kind of lame. He voiced his confusion, but Tilly just squeezed her eyes shut and shook her head vehemently. Impossible. His method is wrong. He could never succeed. My teacher told me the ritual requires the flesh and blood of these ancient gods as a sacrifice. Only a god slayer can become a god, she declared, her voice rising. Only then will a greater, higher being be pleased. Only then can we receive the reward of touching the truth. Only then can we open the gate. It was as if a flood of memories had returned at once. Her eyes flew open. Yes, that's it. She grabbed Leo's wrist, her grip desperate. I'm so close. I'm about to remember everything. Leo quickly placed a hand over hers, hissing, Tilly, wait. His head snapped toward a dark corner of the archives. A moment ago, a bizarre sound had slithered from the shadows. It was a wet, coiling scrape, like a cold, damp serpent dragging itself across the stone floor. This time, the two elders decided to strike first. Spells formed in an instant, and two powerful blasts of magical energy slammed into the darkness. With a thunderous crash of splintering wood and tearing paper, the bookshelf in that corner collapsed, finally revealing the source of the sound. Several thick, grotesque tentacles writhed in the open. They were covered in pulsing, fleshy nodes, some of which split open like mouths to reveal rings of needle-like teeth, like a lamprey's maw. The magical assault had done little more than anger it. The tentacles whipped high into the air, lashing out toward them. A nauseating, fishy stench filled the air. Leo grabbed Tilly, who was still lost in her memories, and pulled her back as Helena carefully flanked him. Faced with the president's second ambush, the elders were far more coordinated. Elder Rollins slammed his staff into the ground, and a hemispherical storm of arcane wind erupted through the hall. The gale-force winds sent the towering bookshelves swaying and then crashing down, one after another, filling the air with a blizzard of flying paper. With their line of sight now clear, Elder Marjorie shot into the air. Her eyes locked onto the figure lurking in the darkness. Behind her, a dozen Ethereum crystals flared to life, forming a glowing array. A continuous barrage of comet-like energy beams streaked toward their foe. In the strobing light of the magical explosions, Leo finally saw him. He finally saw what the president of the Order had become. It was a monstrous form that defied easy description, a nightmarish chimera of things that should never have been joined. Atop a bloated, tumorous mass of flesh writhed numerous tentacles, each armed with its own gnashing mouth. It scuttled across the floor on multiple pairs of webbed limbs, dragging a long, serpentine tail that was part fish, part snake. And on that central mass of flesh was a vast, distorted face that was still vaguely recognizable as human. Leo stared at the bizarre creature, his brow furrowed. It looked like a collection of deep-sea abominations, a walking, Lovecraftian seafood tower. Tilly, still held by the hand, finally snapped out of her trance. She watched the elders battle, her gaze fixing on the monster. The artificial god project, a derisive smirk touched her lips. An idiot is still an idiot. He actually grafted himself onto the sea god, thinking that would grant him ultimate power. But he is incredibly powerful right now, Leo muttered, watching the tide of the battle turn. Under the elders' relentless magical bombardment, the creature's massive body stood unshaken. Elder Marjorie, sensing something was wrong, looked closer and realized the monster was shielding itself with a magical barrier. A faint blue aura shimmered around its body, deflecting their attacks. Not only that, but many of its flailing tentacles were gripping staves and other magical artifacts, like grotesque, disembodied hands. The creature wasn't fighting with brute strength alone. It was meeting them spell for spell. Magic isn't scary. Turning into a monster isn't scary, Leo murmured, watching the two elders scramble to evade the counterattack. What's scary is a monster that also knows magic. The president clearly hadn't lost all of his human intellect. He was not only a mage, but a cunning one. The elders had been forced onto the defensive, constantly dodging the storm of spells raining down on them. It made sense. 2 against 1 was never a fair fight, let alone 2 against 20. Tilly's earlier disdain had vanished, replaced by a deep frown. We can't drag this out. A flicker of irritation crossed her violet eyes. Just then, as if sensing her gaze, the part of the president that could be called a face twisted toward them. A pair of dead white, fish-like eyes locked onto Tilly. The mangled flesh of its face writhed, and a guttural, hideous sound echoed through the chamber. Consume. Power. You. More. Valuable. The creature abandoned its assault on the elders and scuttled with unnerving speed toward the 3 of them. As the president scrambled toward Tilly, its tentacles unleashed a barrage of spells in their direction. Tilly, watch out! Elder Marjorie, ever protective, saw the shift in targets and immediately moved to intercept. But she wasn't needed. Tilly handled the magical onslaught with unnerving ease. Leo watched for the first time at close range, as she calmly produced a small crystal orb. After a brief incantation, an invisible force field expanded around them, and every incoming spell was simply reflected back at the creature. The magic was neutralized, but the president's enormous body was closing in fast. Its dead white eyes were fixed on Tilly, a desperate, hungry roar tearing from its maw. Consume! Consume! An expression of disgust twisted Tilly's features. She pointed her staff directly at the creature's distorted human face, and a pillar of light erupted from its tip. The beam was a continuous, torrential blast of energy that lasted for more than 10 seconds. Even a creature of the president's size couldn't withstand it. Its body began to convulse, tentacles flailing wildly in agony. Tilly sneered at the writhing monster. You must have devoured all the elite mages in your faction, didn't you? She taunted. You absolute fool. You think having a body like this makes you a god? You think swallowing a few mages makes you a better sorcerer? I told you long ago. Read more books, do more research. Stop wasting your time on petty, pointless power games. Tilly leveled her staff at the creature's face once more. At the same time, the 2 elders mirrored her action. Finish it, Tilly commanded. I'm in a hurry. In that moment, powerful magical energies converged from 3 directions, the blue light becoming blindingly intense. It seemed the president was about to be annihilated. But just then, the creature's massive body began to shudder violently. Its flesh pulsed and expanded, and its cavernous mouth stretched open, unleashing a piercing, terrifying shriek. The sound echoed relentlessly in the enclosed space. The two elders faltered, their spell-casting interrupted as their hearts hammered in their chests. Sanity check in progress. Leo gritted his teeth, his eyes fixed on the monster. Psychic assaults were brutally effective against the fragile human mind, even for geniuses like mages. He glanced at Helena, issued a control command to steady her, then looked at Tilly. Her expression was unchanged, but her body had begun to exhibit that strange, flickering distortion again, like a bad signal, and it wouldn't stop. The closer they got to their destination, the more pronounced it became. Tilly stared at the president, who had now swelled to several times its original size and was thrashing with even greater fury. Her eyes were cold with impatience. Damned creature. Is this never going to end? The elders wanted to eliminate the president on this trip, but that was never her goal. She was being held back by these trivialities. Her violet gaze swept over the monster's form before she turned, expressionless, to the other two. You deal with the president. I have more important matters to attend to. You're going now? Elder Rollins was stunned. We haven't even solved the problem at hand. What's the rush? Tilly shot him a look, her eyes leaving no room for argument. Killing the creature was secondary. She had something more important to do, and she couldn't wait any longer. Elder Marjorie, as always, supported her. Go on, don't worry. We'll hold it back. We won't let it disturb your research. Tilly gave her a satisfied nod, then turned her gaze to Leo. We're leaving. She seized his wrist, pulling him without argument into a teleportation circle that flared to life at their feet. Leo, be careful. Helena cried out, but before she could react, Leo's form was already fading. Leo looked at Helena's worried face, about to shout a word of caution, when the world around him dissolved. He was snatched from the dark, cavernous archives and deposited in a bright, spacious room. This is my teachers and my laboratory, Tilly said, her voice filled with nostalgia as she surveyed the pristine surroundings. It's where we kept the sea god's corpse. Finally, she whispered, I'm back. The shadow over Hegra's save point, the Divine Research Institute. Sublevel 2 reloads remaining. May 5th, the save point notification flashed in his vision, and a knot of tension tightened in Leo's stomach. They were finally here. He took a deep breath and, like Tilly, scanned the room. The walls and floor were a sterile white. Thanks to some preservation magic, not a speck of dust coated the equipment on the tables. The place was as clean as a modern hospital's surgical suite. In the center of the room was a large, refrigerated glass case, its lid now open. This must have been where they had stored the sea god's body. This is the place that's been calling to me, Tilly said, her fingers trembling with excitement as she ran them along a long workbench. The feeling told me I left something here. As soon as I find it, my wish can come true. Leo followed her in silence. The strange distortion affecting Tilly's body was now more intense than ever, like she was a chaotic, flickering signal. I remember now. This is where I witnessed the miracle. Her pace quickened. I saw it then. I saw everything. But why? Why are my memories after that so blurry? I can't recall anything at all. Tilly stopped at the end of the line of tables. There was nowhere else to go. She stared at the empty workbench before her, which held an assortment of glass beakers and instruments, looking no different from any other. Leo watched her, confused, wondering what she was looking for. Tilly studied the table for a long moment. Suddenly, as if prompted by an unseen force, she reflexively reached out and chanted a short spell. The table vanished. Lying on the pristine white floor was a small, old-fashioned lockbox. An illusion, she murmured. I must have said it before I left. Tilly knelt down slowly. Leo, curious, leaned in beside her. As they both watched, the lid of the box was lifted. Inside was a single torn sheet of paper and a small, faintly glowing sphere. Leo's eyes were immediately drawn to the paper. It was torn from Ursula's notebook, the very last page, the most crucial part. Tilly looked at the two objects, her expression puzzled. This wasn't what she'd expected. While she hesitated, Leo picked up the fragment of the notebook. He looked at the front first. The handwriting was even more frantic and chaotic than the final entries in the book. It took him a moment to decipher the words. It turns out that is what the gate is. It controls time and space. A truly omniscient, omnipotent God that knows the past and future. This is truth itself, and I have been fortunate enough to touch this great being. I can use this power too. I must go back. Even if I can't stop it, I have to know what truly happened in that part of history. Gods, I can't wait any longer. We're finally saved. That was the front of the page. The writing was a mess, the emotion ecstatic, but it was filled with confidence. Then Leo turned it over. On the back were several lines of twisted, dried bloodstains. The words radiated despair and sorrow. The fundamental logic of the world has been corrupted. The mage problem has no solution. Do not open the gate. A strange being in space-time, a hound, will hunt you endlessly. It will not rest until you are dead. If you're reading this note from my journal, it means I am already gone. Give up this obsession. There is nothing we can do. Your teacher wants you to live a good life. Goodbye, Tilly. Leo silently put the page down. Besides the bloody words, there was a smeared handprint, clear evidence that Ursula had been in a desperate, likely wounded state when she wrote her final message. It was undeniably her last will. The few short lines of blood-soaked text hit Leo with a wave of overwhelming despair. He never imagined Ursula had actually succeeded in such an impossible feat. Yet even then, she had solved nothing. She had only brought back a single, glaring phrase. No solution. Leo slowly turned to Tilly and handed her the page. This is the last page torn from your teacher's notebook. It's for you. Tilly's eyes widened. This is for my teacher. Leo watched her quietly. The hand holding the page trembled as she read it over and over, her expression shifting to one of sheer disbelief. How is that possible? How can the mage problem have no solution? If that's true, then our efforts over the millennia have all been for nothing? What have we been doing all this time? And her voice broke. She says she's dead? More than anything else, the final lines were what she couldn't accept. Tilly stared at the page, her emotions cycling from confusion to shock, and finally, to a complete loss of control. She began to laugh, a strange, hollow sound. She laughed, her body shaking, and pointed a trembling finger at the last sentence for Leo to see. My teacher would never say something like this to me. Leo, she must be joking. She has to be. You have to believe me. I knew it. How could someone as legendary as her just die? So the rest of it must be a lie, too. Leo looked at her, her words and actions growing more frantic by the second, and sighed. Ursula wasn't just a teacher to her. She was a mother. Just as Tilly had stubbornly searched for him for 4 years, she was just as fanatically convinced that someone like her teacher could never die. It was clear now. The one who had torn out this last page was Tilly herself, because she refused to accept it. Leo gently reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek. Tilly's bloodshot eyes snapped to his. Leo, you don't believe me? He looked at her and said softly, what does it matter if I believe you or not? The truth is right here. Sooner or later, you'll have to face it. Tilly clutched at her hair, still refusing to accept any of it. No. If that's the case, if nothing we do matters, then why was there a feeling calling me here? Is this it? Is this all there is? It can't be like this. Tilly's expression grew more contorted. Just as Leo was about to try and console her, he noticed a strange change in the small, blue glowing sphere in the box. It began to tremble slightly before floating into the air. Before Leo's astonished eyes, the sphere dissolved, transforming from a solid object into a cloud of ethereal blue light. The light gathered, swirling around them like a ghost before settling a short distance from Tilly. Even Tilly stopped her ranting, staring at the phenomenon with a wary eye. The mysterious light illuminated their faces, and as they watched, it slowly coalesced into the shape of a young girl, crouched on the floor. The girl's phantom-like image flickered, its frequency matching the strange distortion affecting Tilly's own body. Leo stared in amazement. The girl was curled up under a table, hugging her knees, her buried face shaking with suppressed sobs. This crying girl was Tilly. What is this? Seeing another version of herself cowering on the floor, Tilly was utterly shocked. Before she could process it, she clutched her head in pain as another wave of memories crashed over her. This time, it lasted longer than ever before, and her physical form began to fluctuate violently. At the same time, a notification appeared in Leo's vision. Sealed memory, psyche, threat level. A memory sealed by Tilly in the laboratory 6 months ago. Touch to read. Understanding dawned on Leo. No wonder she kept saying she would remember everything once she returned. The feeling that had been calling to her was her own sealed memory. Leo looked silently at the version of Tilly huddled onto the table. He had never seen her so sad, so fragile, crying like a lost little girl. This must have been from the day her teacher died, 6 months ago. Leo gently reached out and touched the phantom of the sobbing Tilly. In that instant, a cascade of images flashed before his eyes. By reading her memory, Leo finally understood what had happened that day. He was pulled into her emotions, experiencing it all as if he had been there himself. So, something like this really exists? The ability to freely travel through time and space. Isn't that what it means to be a god? If this really works, maybe we could finally break the curse on mages. But I'm thinking of more than just that. He's been gone for so long. With this method, could I find him? The young woman with black hair and violet eyes looked at her teacher with unconcealed excitement, her heart pounding with anticipation. She watched as her teacher performed the sacrificial ritual, offering the flesh of the sea god. She watched as she produced the key and opened a gate that was invisible to the naked eye, but was terrifyingly real. My teacher said it is the source of all cosmic knowledge, the door to worlds and dimensions beyond our own. It is the gate, and it is the key. It is the avatar of truth, and it is truth itself. She did it. The girl witnessed a miracle. She saw her teacher vanish before her very eyes. A euphoric grin spread across her face. Her heart soared, but that feeling lasted for less than 3 seconds. The next moment, Ursula's horrific, mutilated corpse appeared before her, torn to pieces. At the same time, she heard a strange, faint sound from beyond the gate. She felt something look at her, something without a physical form, yet cold and menacing, like a predator staring at its dying prey. Fear, cold and immediate, slithered through her veins. That thing killed her teacher. The girl stared at the shredded remains of the woman who had raised her and collapsed, her mind shattering. She couldn't believe what she was seeing, but she had no choice but to accept it. That was her teacher. 2 of the fingers were still clutching the notebook. The emotional whiplash felt like a waking nightmare. One moment, she was looking forward to a bright future, to the day she would be reunited with him. The next, from hope to total collapse in just 3 seconds. Numbly, the girl flipped through the notebook her teacher had left behind and saw the final words meant for her. So, the research she and her teacher had dedicated their lives to, the millennia of work by the order of magical arcanists. It was all meaningless. The wonderful life she had longed for, free of all burdens, evaporated in an instant. If seeing her teacher's body was agony, learning this cruel truth plunged her into absolute despair. This disgusting, rotten world. There was no point to it anymore. It was beyond saving. Like a 10-year-old girl, she curled up under the table and wept. She had never considered herself the leader of a faction or the hope of the order. She was just an ordinary girl with a bit of magical talent, lucky enough to have been chosen by her teacher. She should have been at Blackwood Academy with Leo. Maybe they would have been classmates. Maybe she could have shown him up in one of his major courses. Maybe she could have spent her time quietly reading frivolous books in the library. She never wanted to restore the glory of some damn Magus Imperium. As she thought this, Tilly froze. Her sobs subsided, because an image had appeared in her mind. Leo. Only when she thought of him did her heart find a moment of peace. An idea took root. Leave this damned world. Find Leo. It was the only thought she had left, the only motivation she had to keep living. And so, a desperate, insane plan began to form. Ever since Tilly learned about the gate, she was certain of one thing. Leo had left their world. For years, she had traveled the entire globe. From a northern continent to the south, from frozen tundras to burning deserts, from towering mountains to remote archipelagos. Her journey had even taken her to the storm sea, a treacherous expanse of ocean few ever returned from. But no matter where she looked, she found not a single clue. It was as if Leo had simply vanished from the face of the earth. Such a thing should have been impossible. With the vast and complex intelligence network the Order had cultivated for a millennium, finding a single person should have been easy. Unless he was dead. You can't find a dead man. But that, too, was impossible. It wasn't that she didn't believe Leo could die, but on that last day, in that final moment, she had watched him fade away with her own eyes. So when her teacher told her about the gate, Tilly was ecstatic. The gate could traverse not only space, but time as well. Other worlds existed. Leo wasn't in this world anymore. He had likely returned to his own. That's right. Tilly had always suspected that Leo didn't belong here. The suspicion had taken root long ago, born from the things he would create, things that were beyond her comprehension. Suppressing the magical backlash was something even the Order was powerless against. Their treatments were barely better than nothing. Yet Leo could tinker at an alchemy bench and produce results that left her speechless. How old was he? How had he mastered a system of knowledge so terrifyingly advanced, so far beyond her own? And there was the matter of his identity. He was a complete mystery. After he disappeared, Tilly had tried to investigate his family, only to discover with a shock that there was no sterling family to speak of. The name existed in New Haven, yes, but no one had ever actually met his supposed parents. His family, his lineage, it all seemed to be nothing more than a nebulous concept. The entire affair was shrouded in mystery. Thinking back, his occasionally strange behavior, the ideas and perspectives that slipped out in conversation, they were all at odds with everyone else in this world. Sometimes, even she couldn't keep up with his train of thought. His positive view of the magitech industry that Rudolph Gould had pioneered, for instance. Only after becoming vice president did she learn that Gould had once been a member of the order, her teacher's junior, and had been exiled for his conflicting ideals. So, the moment she learned of the gate, she knew. Leo truly didn't belong here, and she desperately yearned for the world he came from. A world that could produce someone as interesting as Leo had to be an interesting place itself. He was always so positive, so optimistic about everything. His home. It must be a world without war, without political scheming, without superpowered individuals randomly going insane. A world infinitely better than this wretched place. A paradise. She longed for such a world. A beautiful new world. So, she had to try, no matter the cost. Her dream was to live a happy, ordinary life with Leo in that beautiful world. She would pay any price. She had nothing left. Her teacher was dead, and Leo was gone. She had nothing left to lose. Tilly gazed at her teacher's mangled corpse, took a deep breath, and gathered the courage to open the gate. She took a half step forward. In that instant, she felt it again. That cold, predatory gaze, like a hunter watching its prey. It would relentlessly pursue any ignorant fool who dared to traverse space-time, hunt them down, and tear them to shreds. It wasn't a literal hound, but her teacher's description was unervingly apt. Tilly closed the gate. She wasn't afraid. As a magical researcher, she always prepared thoroughly for every experiment. If she took that step now, she would only end up like her teacher. So she had to wait. She needed a plan. How could she avoid being killed by the hound? Or, to simplify the concept, how could she avoid being killed at all? An idea came to her, a secret project within the order. The soul project. If I kill my own physical body and separate my psyche from it, can I avoid death? The idea had merit, but unfortunately, a psyche couldn't exist for long without a body. It would simply dissipate. She even thought of a joke Leo had once told her about a haunted house. At the time, she hadn't understood the meaning of a ghost. As Leo had later remarked, "Looks like you guys don't have ghosts here. That's nice." It seemed she was about to become the ghost from Leo's story. Tilly threw herself into the research. She didn't know how she got through those days, facing endless failures. Her spirit was numb, like a walking corpse. But every time she thought of Leo, her heart would find a moment of peace, of hope. It became a habit. Driven by a stubborn, determined, near-manic will, the Soul Project was eventually a success. In the sea of ancient scrolls, she found a dark magic that could reconstruct a physical body. The side effects were severe. It would make normal life nearly impossible, but she didn't care. As long as she could get to Leo's world and live with him, that was all that mattered. So Tilly killed herself. In the weeks following her success, her body struggled to adapt. She went through several new Tillys. The previous bodies had all succumbed to rejection, rotting into putrid corpses she buried in the garden behind the institute. She used alchemy to shape her bones and dark magic to grow her flesh. It was a miracle of life magic, a feat only gods were capable of in ancient myths. But Tilly did it. That day she laughed. A wild, crazed laugh. She no longer feared death. How could you fear being killed when you were already dead? She could open the gate. She could go find Leo. But perhaps fate had other plans. It was then, in a report from one of her subordinates, that Tilly received the news. Leo was back. He was really back. Tilly's emotions were a tangled mess. It wasn't about her ridiculous, patched-together body. It was about whether she should continue with her plan. Of course, the plan had to continue. She didn't just want to be with Leo. She wanted to be with Leo in a beautiful new world. Both parts were non-negotiable. This disgusting, trash, rotten world. The Church, the Wigner Empire, the Kingdom of Florenza, the Winter Federation, the Archipelago Alliance, and all those anomaly nations on the southern continent. None of it should exist. Endless scheming, endless power struggles. It was full of lunatics. Not a single normal person among them. They could all just die. If she didn't know this world was already doomed, she might have even helped speed it along to a grand, fiery end. She had wanted to do that for a long time. Especially after hearing about the horrors Leo had recently endured in New Haven. It only reinforced her conviction. This world was beyond saving. Without Leo, New Haven would have been destroyed a dozen times over. So let it be destroyed. She and Leo would escape this world, escape all this despair, and go to a beautiful new world that belonged only to them. Once this was her dream, but now her dream was about to come true. However, the plan needed one final step. She had to seal her memories, the memories from before this moment, because she knew what she was like now. This version of her was terrifying. Even her colleagues at the institute were afraid of her. Leo was too smart. He would see it, and she cared about him too much. What if she went soft? So, Tilly extracted a part of her memory. In her psychic form, it was easy. She was already a master of the domains of life and soul, capable of feats that even the legendary Ursula could not achieve. She sealed her memories, successfully deceiving herself. She would leave the rest to the future Tilly. She knew herself well. Even with missing memories, she would stubbornly find Leo and reunite with him. She left behind just enough of her thoughts on the gods to serve as a breadcrumb, a tantalizing clue that would make the new Tilly ecstatic, just as she had once been. All preparations were complete. Finally, good night, Leo. I look forward to the day we meet again. As Leo finished reading the last of Tilly's memories, the glowing memory form in front of him began to flicker. Then, Tilly's psyche and the fragment she had separated from it slowly began to merge. Before his eyes, the two Tillys became one. Now, the woman standing before him was finally whole. Her butterfly wing lashes fluttered, and her violet eyes snapped open. Perhaps from the sudden influx of so much information, her expression was momentarily dazed. They stared at each other in silence. So that's how it was. They were her own memories, after all. Tilly adapted quickly. Her expression shifted from initial confusion and shock to a placid calm. But beneath that calm, Leo could feel a tempest brewing. He watched her with a complicated gaze. To be honest, his heart felt heavy. He never imagined this was the truth. 6 months ago, she and Ursula had gone through something so bizarre, so tragic. But it wasn't their ordeal that weighed on him. It was everything Tilly had done since. Her obsession, her near-manic will and determination. It frightened him. What a heavy, suffocating love. To achieve her goal, she had even killed herself. All for the sake of reuniting with him. No, not just reuniting. Eloping. Fleeing this world. A world she found so hopeless. At any cost, Leo looked at her and forced a bitter smile. Tilly, why would you go to such lengths? He knew it was useless. To say anything to this Tilly, this nearly unhinged Tilly, was pointless. But he had to try. Tilly, you might not be able to hear this right now, but I have to tell you. The beautiful new world you're imagining. It doesn't exist. You're lying. Tilly's calm expression shattered, replaced by a ferocious snarl. Her body trembled as she seized his wrist, her grip like a vice. You're still trying to lie to me? You came from another world. You've even crossed over twice. How could a world like that not exist? Leo met her gaze steadily. There's no such thing as a perfect world. That's a fantasy you've created, something the church uses to deceive its ignorant followers. They can fall for it, but how could someone as rational as you believe it? Tilly stared at him coldly. What are you trying to say? I'm saying, Leo said with a sad smile, wherever there are people, there will be conflict. And when there are a lot of people, conflict becomes war. The world has always been like this. How could someone as smart as you not understand? If you really went to my world and saw the same human nature, the same hatred, jealousy, and greed, you would be disappointed. Wait, Tilly's focus seemed to be on a different track entirely. She shouted, her voice filled with manic glee. You admit it? A world like that really does exist. Leo blinked. Hold on, he said, frowning. Did you even hear what I said? I'm saying that no matter where you go, you won't find your so-called beautiful new world. It doesn't exist. No, it does. It does. She suddenly threw her arms around him, laughing ecstatically. Oh, that's wonderful. I can finally rest easy. Leo, you're the best. I thought you'd never tell me. The hug was so tight it was hard to breathe, but faced with this Tilly, he couldn't bring himself to push her away. Leo sighed and wrapped his arms around her. A deep sadness settled in his chest, a heavy fog he couldn't dispel. He felt pity for her. She was truly broken. How could she possibly be normal with a corruption level of 100? The only reason she'd seemed stable before was because her memory was incomplete. Telling you this doesn't really matter, Leo said with a bitter smile, stroking her slightly coarse hair. I can tell you everything. Leo, you're amazing. Tilly excitedly pressed a fierce kiss to his lips. Something like this. Not even. She pulled back, hesitating for a moment. Not even Ophelia knows, does she? But you told me. She smiled sweetly. Does that mean I'm much more important to you than she is? I knew it. I knew I wasn't wrong about you. After their talk, Tilly buried her face in Leo's chest, leaning against him like she used to when she would doze off on his shoulder. Leo, I love you. I really, really love you. I heard that Gould chased after my teacher his whole life. Even after leaving home and becoming famous in New Haven, he never married. And my teacher remained single her whole life, too. We can't end up like them. We have to be together forever. Leo gently stroked her hair, his fingers brushing against her pale, exhausted cheek. The touch of his fingers on her eyelashes tickled, and she giggled, looking up at him. I used to scoff at that word. I thought it was just a biological instinct between men and women. But now I understand. This must be love. She gazed up at Leo's face and asked softly, Do you love me, Leo? I do. Tilly's smile was radiant. Leo, since you love me, then let me kill you. Leo looked at her quietly. You're still determined to do that? Tilly nodded firmly, her smile bright and happy. After I kill you, I'll extract your psyche, and we'll open the gate together. That way, we won't have to fear being hunted by the guardians of space-time, because we'll already be dead. And then, she continued, her voice trembling with excitement as she imagined their future, we can go to your world and never have to worry about any of this again. The Order, the Church, the Mage's Curse, the return of the old gods. None of it will matter. Let all burn. We'll live our own lives together forever. And what if my world isn't as beautiful as you think? Leo asked. This time, Tilly seemed to hear him. She paused for a moment, then smiled. Then we'll go to other worlds. There has to be one that will suit us. Even if you find your ideal world, there are still flaws in your plan, aren't there? Leo stared into her eyes. Who told you that being a psyche makes you immune to being killed by the guardian of the gate? That's just what you believe. You've never actually tested it. Tilly's brow furrowed slightly, her smile fading. Leo, are you doubting my abilities? Leo shook his head. No, I'm just thinking through the potential holes in your plan for you. He saw the uncertainty in her expression and offered a small smile. As a magical researcher, you need to be rational, patient, and careful. You've never actually proven this method is viable, have you? It's still just a hypothesis, so why are you so certain? Who said it's a hypothesis? Tilly shot back. How is it not viable? Have you tried it? Leo pressed. Someone has, Tilly explained immediately. This method has been successful before. Now, it was Leo's turn to be stunned. Who? Tilly smiled. Not a person. A race. She began to recount an experience from her world travels. 2 years ago, I reached the storm sea at the edge of civilization. In that strange, mysterious ocean, I met a wondrous ancient race. They called themselves the Great Race. Her excitement flared again. They have a special ability to transfer their consciousness to other races in other times and places. It allows them to avoid extinction when their world is destroyed. By stealing the bodies of other races, they've achieved true immortality. She looked at Leo, her eyes shining. That's where I got the idea. If they weren't hunted down and killed by the hounds, then of course we can do it too. At this, she sighed wistfully. It's a pity my teacher knew nothing about the hounds. That's why she died. If only she had done this. But her eyes lit up. Since we can travel through time, maybe we can save my teacher too? Tilly fell into thought. Let me think about how to do that. It seems a bit complicated, but no matter what, before any of that, I have to kill you first. Leo's expression was a picture of disbelief. He had never imagined that something had actually succeeded at this before. He looked at Tilly, exasperated. You really have thought of everything, haven't you? Of course, Tilly beamed with pride. How can I not take something this important seriously? By the way, she said, looking up at him, you've asked so many questions. Are you done now? When she saw Leo shake his head, she frowned. Are you worried? Leo, please, trust me. There won't be a single mistake. I promise to give you a peaceful death. Leo felt a surreal absurdity wash over him. The two of them were having a serious, earnest discussion about how she was going to kill him. Not done, of course I'm not done, Leo said quickly. Tilly was in a rare state of emotional stability, genuinely believing he was willing to die for her. He had to get as much information as he could. Every reload was precious. Seeing the suspicion creeping back in her eyes, Leo adopted a serious tone. Even if you can do it, have you ever considered that you don't actually need to turn me into a psyche? That I don't need to hide from these so-called hounds? Tilly looked at him, confused. Leo slowly let go of her and pointed at himself. I've already gone back and forth twice. Did I ever run into any hounds? Look at me. I'm standing right here in front of you. Am I torn to shreds? Tilly's mouth opened, then closed. A flicker of hesitation crossed her face. Seeing his chance, Leo pressed his advantage. And have you forgotten about my old manor? Without my permission, nothing in this world can cause trouble there. How about this? If you're worried about the hounds, we can open the gate inside the manor. What do you say? Tilly shook her head. No. Leo blinked. Why not? She looked at him, her voice flat. Lure me to your home, and then contain me? So you never trusted me after all. A chill went down Leo's spine. He quickly waved his hands. No, not at all. I'm genuinely willing to elope with you. Really? A faint smile touched Tilly's lips. Because it feels to me like you're just stalling. As she spoke, her body tensed, and her hand shot out, grabbing his wrist again. No, I can't talk to you anymore. You're too good at manipulating people. I almost fell for it again. Come on, let's go. Let me kill you quickly, before something else goes wrong. Tilly, wait a minute. Leo was so exasperated he almost laughed. Was I wrong about what I just said? Why are you so fixated on killing me? You don't have to. No, it's not the same. Tilly glared at him. From my analysis, you don't even know how you crossed over in the first place. You have no idea about the gate or the key. They are two completely different things. If it's as simple as you say, then go on, cross back. Can you? She challenged, her eyes boring into him. Well, no, Leo admitted helplessly. There you have it. Tilly's eyes widened. You tricky, silver-tongued liar. You almost talked me in circles. I have to die. That is the undeniable premise, the only way to succeed. She stared at him coldly. And you have to die too. Leo looked at her, saying nothing. A sinister smile crept across Tilly's face. What? Scared? You were just talking so much, telling me you love me. If you really love me, then let me kill you. Leo remained silent. Tilly watched him, then frowned. No, that's not it. Her sharp intuition kicked in. You have other concerns, don't you? She said softly. You're still thinking about them, aren't you? That's why you don't want to leave with me. What if I am? Leo held her gaze, unflinching. Helena is still out there. She's in danger. I can't just leave her. Mentioning another woman's name to Tilly was risky, but Helena was a special case. In Tilly's eyes, Helena was her younger sister. She'd even bought her a gift. Tilly wasn't entirely without affection for her. He hadn't expected her immediate solution. That's simple. I'll just kill her too. What? Leo stared at her. Don't misunderstand, Tilly said with a sing-song smile. I mean, I'll extract Helena's psyche, too, and put her in a new body. We can take her with us. We can live as a family of 3. Wouldn't that be nice? I thought you wouldn't want to bring anyone else, Leo thought darkly. I'm not that selfish, Tilly said, her tone softening. Helena is your sister. You two have always relied on each other. You're very close. I know all that. I've already thought about what to do with Helena. Tilly smiled gently. Remember the gift I gave her? Leo looked at her. The puppet. Exactly. Tilly nodded brightly. From now on, that will be her new body. Leo stared at her in shock, never imagining this was what she meant by handling Helena. Tilly saw the horror in his eyes and smiled, stroking his cheek. A little sister shouldn't be so close to her big brother. You two are always stuck together, practically inseparable. It would be terrible if you did something immoral, something you'd both regret. I'm just looking out for you. Leo was speechless. How thoughtful of you. On Helena's behalf, thank you so much. You're welcome, Tilly chirped. At this point, Leo had nothing left to say. The plan's feasibility, every minute detail. Tilly had thought of everything and prepared for it all. All that was left was for him to die. The whole situation felt utterly absurd. Tilly tightened her grip on his hand again, pulling him toward one side of the lab. No more questions now, right? Since you understand everything, let's get started. I've even researched how to kill you. My method won't hurt at all. You just have to take a little nap. Leo gave a dry laugh. So considerate. I really can't thank you enough. You're welcome, Tilly said with a sweet smile. It's because I love you. Hand in hand, Tilly led him toward the other side of the underground laboratory. Leo saw numerous skeletal specimens here. This area was clearly dedicated to research on life and death. Walking this path to his own demise, Leo felt strangely calm. It wasn't that he wasn't afraid of death. He was terrified of it. Nor was he genuinely moved by Tilly's devotion. He had no desire to traverse space-time again, and he didn't want to return to his original world. Maybe at the very beginning, he'd had that thought. Back then, he was dying over and over, each death more gruesome than the last. He'd constantly wondered when it would ever end. But somewhere along the way, that desire had faded. While this world was, as Tilly said, a complete mess, and the living conditions were abysmal for a young man from a technologically advanced era. The weather in New Haven was always shit, and the chefs cooked like they were making it. He would have loved to force-feed them 100 pounds of potatoes. You like cooking it so much. Eat it until you explode. But This world held a special meaning for him now. Because here, he had friends, a sister, and people he loved, and the best teacher he could have asked for. In his original world, he was an orphan. He had only himself. So now he was content. Besides, he had promised Helena, promised Ophelia, that he wouldn't disappear again, wouldn't leave them. Leo intended to keep his promise. So, to hell with some beautiful new world. The reason he wasn't resisting, the reason he seemed to be willingly walking to his death, was simple. Might as well. He was just as curious about the gate as Tilly and her teacher were. It was only his first life on this save file. Why not take a look? Worst case, he'd use the Eye of Insight to force a psychotic break and reload. Of course, he still thought the whole thing was insane. Tilly's plan was almost certainly doomed to fail. What are you thinking about? Tilly led him to a chair and had him sit down before starting to fiddle with various devices. Nothing, Leo said, not in the mood to talk. Tilly stopped and looked at his expression, tilting her head. Are you worried? She said, trying to comfort him. Don't be afraid. The success rate for soul extraction is quite high. Oh, Leo replied flatly. Then, something fell off. His eyes widened. Success rate? Don't tell me this thing can fail. Tilly nodded honestly. Of course. A procedure this complex is bound to have a success rate. Leo stared at her deadpan. You'd better tell me it's 99. 9%. It's close. Tilly giggled, covering her mouth. The success rate is 90%. 90%. Leo glared at her. That's not even close. What if he was unlucky enough to be in that 10%? He would have died for nothing. That's already very high, Tilly said seriously. When I extracted my own psyche, the success rate was less than 50%, but I still succeeded. I was worried about the risks, so I've been running experiments on test subjects ever since. After countless repetitions, I finally managed to raise the success rate to about 90%. Success is the most likely outcome. And what if I'm that unlucky one? Leo shot back. What happens to me? You'll leave behind an empty shell of a body. The psyche will fail to coalesce and will quickly dissipate into the air, Tilly stated. Leo shot to his feet. If this was a sure thing, he might be willing to give it a try. He was curious about what was behind the gate. But now she was telling him there was a good chance he'd die on the operating table before he even got there. He only had 5 lives. He couldn't afford to waste them like this. Tilly, Leo stood up. I think we can wait on this. Wait until you get the success rate. He didn't get a finish. A cold smile spread across Tilly's face. She just slightly raised her hand, and Leo's entire body froze. Dark magic, marionette hex. This trick again, other than his face, Leo had lost control of his entire body. A cold sweat broke out on his brow. He clenched his jaw, straining to move his eyes toward Tilly. You're being completely unreasonable. Tilly gently stroked his face. Don't worry, Leo. I will succeed. How could I bear to let you truly die? Let's talk probabilities. Leo said coldly. What if I really die? Tilly shook her head fiercely, her voice filled with obsession. No, you won't die. Leo was used to this by now. Keep deluding yourself. Sooner or later, I'll snap you out of it, and we'll see how much you regret this then. As these furious thoughts raced through his mind, Leo continued to struggle. He strained to move his eyes, forcing them toward the ring on his finger. No reaction. Are you wondering why Ophelia hasn't shown up? Leo's heart lurched. He shot a look at her. Don't bother, Tilly said with a giggle. Even if you scream your head off, she's not coming. A look of shock crossed Leo's face. Remember how I've been spending time teaching her teleportation these past few days? Leo's brow furrowed. You did something? What did you do? Tilly's smile slowly faded. You that worried about her? Seeing Leo's stone-faced glare, demanding an answer, Tilly let out a cold laugh. Looks like I did the right thing. A girl who hasn't even been certified as a magic apprentice dares to learn the profound and complex grand teleportation of our order. I didn't have to do much at all. The massive energy explosion from a spell losing control would be enough to annihilate everyone in that tomb. Of course, she might get lucky, but it doesn't matter. Even if she's not dead, she won't have time to worry about you. As he listened, Leo's expression grew darker and darker. You planned all of this from the start. Plan. Tilly sneered. She was never part of the plan. I did it because she pissed me off that day. She called me selfish. How could I be selfish? I love you so much. For you, I was willing to give up my body, willing to endure, in those primitive conditions, the agonizing torment of the soul extraction. Ophelia should have died long ago. That arrogant, hypocritical noble, along with her monstrous family and the Wigner Empire, should have all been destroyed. Tilly's beautiful face twisted into a hideous mask. Suddenly, she seemed to remember something else. Wait, there's one more, isn't there? Tilly stared at Leo, her eyes like chips of ice. The vampire? Where is your vampire teacher? I didn't even notice. Why didn't she come with you? Where is she? Leo stared back at her, expressionless. Tilly laughed, a cruel, twisted sound. Shame, what a shame. I was planning to kill her along with the others. She actually got away. But inwardly, he breathed a sigh of relief. He knew Tilly was up to no good. Good thing he'd had Evelyn leave early. Unexpectedly, Tilly burst into wild, manic laughter. Leo, you really do care about them, don't you? But do you think she's safe just because she left? Did you think my people are only in this town? She cackled. I'm telling you, from here to the next city, that long, remote road is being watched by many of our mages. There's even Elder, a powerful mage who specializes in combat. He's lived for 200 years. Killing a vampire is as easy for him as crushing an ant. After her outburst, perhaps seeing Leo's increasingly grim face, Tilly finally broke into a gleeful smile. She leaned in close to his dark expression, her grin demonic. With a single order from me, your teacher will die. Then, as if that wasn't enough to drive him to despair, Tilly even cast a communication spell. A blue shimmer appeared in the air. Through the spell's perspective, Leo saw Evelyn from above, hurrying through the forest, completely unaware of the danger closing in. After ending the communication, Tilly leaned in close to Leo's ear and whispered a threat. Leo, I don't think you want your vampire teacher to die, do you? Leo stared at her coldly. I don't. You really don't. Tilly, Leo sighed. Say no more. I'll do it. Good. Excellent. Tilly laughed. With all obstacles removed, Tilly seemed to relax, her frantic energy subsiding. She looked at Leo with a gentle expression. If you'd just been like this from the start, we wouldn't have had a fight. Leo looked away. Tilly, I really underestimated you. He had expected her madness, but not her ruthlessness. Time really did change a person. The Tilly in his heart was slowly merging with the image of the Witch of Calamity on the church's wanted posters. The me I am now is not the me I was before, Tilly said with a faint smile. The weak-hearted girl I used to be. I killed her myself. Was it worth it? Leo asked. I'd do it again. Fine, Leo nodded. Let's do it. So what if there was a 10% failure rate? Was he really that unlucky? Hell, he'd won on a scratch-off ticket once. After preparing the necessary equipment, a mysterious, magical glow enveloped them. Tilly gently laid the immobilized Leo down, placing a helmet covered in complex, metallic patterns on his head, and finally inserted a thin needle into his vein. Throughout the entire process, Tilly's movements were steady and precise. She had rehearsed this countless times. Her calmness helped soothe Leo's own frayed nerves. This serum is very potent. Anyone who takes it will fall into a peaceful sleep. You won't feel a thing, Tilly said, sensing his anxiety. Don't worry, she reassured him. The soul extraction technique has been tested countless times. 90% is just the theoretical probability. With me performing the procedure, there will only be one outcome: success. As the clear liquid from the tube slowly entered his bloodstream, Leo's eyes grew heavy. The world went dark, his thoughts turning to fog. There will only be one outcome: success. That was the last sound he heard. Then, soul extraction failed. Your physical body and psyche have both been destroyed. Mission failed, unable to continue. Forcing reload. Leo's eyes snapped open. He immediately scanned his surroundings. White walls, a white floor, and Tilly, holding his hand tightly, her steps quick and anxious. I remember now. This is where I witnessed the miracle. I saw it then. I saw everything. The scene was painfully familiar. He was back to the moment he had first entered the laboratory. Chapter 3. The Shadow over Hegra's Save Point. The Divine Research Institute. Sublevel 2 reloads remaining. April 5th, realizing he had died and reloaded because of the soul extraction, Leo cursed his luck. A 10% failure rate, and he'd hit it on the very first try. What kind of garbage luck was that? For someone with cursed RNG, the only options were bad and worse. And another thing, Leo shot a resentful glare at Tilly. Weren't you so sure, so confident that with you at the helm, there would only be one outcome? Talk about eating your words. Muttering under his breath, Leo stayed put and continued to observe Tilly. She was still oblivious to what was about to happen, staring blankly at the empty table at the end of the room. In a few moments, after her memory was restored, she would latch onto that obsessive idea and become dead set on killing him. If this kept up, 5 lives might not be enough. Probability was a fickle bitch. When your luck was out, you could choke on water. He had no intention of wasting his lives on Tilly's crazy experiments. He needed to stall, to think of a new plan. At that moment, Tilly had undone the illusion spell and was lifting the old lockbox. An illusion, she murmured in realization. I must have said it before I left. While her attention was focused, Leo quietly backed away. Tiptoeing, he began searching for the laboratory door. Tilly had teleported him in, but Leo didn't know that trick. The sub-level 2 lab was about the size of a lecture hall. As he searched, he couldn't find a door anywhere. The entire laboratory seemed to be a massive, sealed space, with no entrance or exit. Leo frowned. Was teleportation the only way in or out? He looked around at the complex, precise instruments. Something wasn't right. Had she and her teacher carried all this stuff in themselves? And building such a large underground space would have required more than just the two of them. There had to be another way in. Leo ran his hand along the smooth white wall, thinking the door might be hidden, just like the lockbox had been. He quickened his search. When Leo reached one side of the room, he felt the wall he was touching vibrate slightly. Realizing what it meant, he quickly pressed his ear against it. The other side of the wall had to be hollow. A series of faint tremors pulsed through the stone. Something massive was approaching. He held his breath and listened, and then he heard the muffled sounds of battle. It was chaos out there. It had to be the president. It was desperate to devour Tilly and consume her power. The elders hadn't been able to hold it back. Now it was right outside the laboratory entrance, separated only by this wall. Having found the entrance, Leo didn't try to break the illusion immediately. Instead, he turned back to look at Tilly. Her body was fluctuating violently as she merged with her memory fragment. The process was almost complete. Leo walked back to the spot where he had been operated on. He began rummaging through cabinets and drawers. A moment later, he found a sealed glass vial. This was the anesthetic they had injected into him, the one that had knocked him out instantly. It worked much faster and more effectively than anything Carolyn had ever used. A plan began to form in his mind. Memorizing the vial's location, Leo turned around, only to see Tilly standing silently right behind him. "Leo, what are you looking for?" she asked, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You scared the hell out of me." Leo clutched his chest. Tilly moved without making a sound. "I saw you were busy and didn't want to disturb you, so I was just looking around." "Oh, is that so?" Tilly clearly didn't believe him, but didn't press the issue. She walked over and took his hand, her grip tight. "I've seen what my teacher left for me, and I've recovered my memories." Leo smiled. "Congratulations. Then your teacher must have become a god, right?" Tilly froze. Leo looked at her and continued. "Since your teacher succeeded, she must be hoping you'll succeed too and follow in her footsteps. It seems all your years of hard work weren't for nothing after all. I'm really happy for you." After he finished, a heavy silence fell over the room. Tilly opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because her teacher hadn't succeeded. All their work had been for nothing. Tilly thought of the last words her teacher had left for her. "Give up this obsession. There is nothing we can do. Your teacher wants you to live a good life. Goodbye, Tilly." Thinking of this, Tilly's hand tightened into a fist. "My teacher wanted me to live a good life, but look at me now, stuck in this patched-up, pathetic body, unable to sleep for months, living like a walking corpse. I can't even eat properly, just chugging down disgusting nutrient solutions to stay alive. If it weren't for that meal with Leo, I would have forgotten what food even tasted like. If my teacher saw me like this, she would be so disappointed." Leo watched her quietly. Her body trembled slightly, her violet eyes darting back and forth as if caught in a fierce internal struggle. It seemed approaching this from her teacher's perspective was the right move. As long as Tilly still cared about that, her obsession wasn't entirely beyond reach. "You're wrong. Leo, my teacher, she didn't succeed, and she doesn't want me to follow her path." Tilly silently handed the last page of a notebook to Leo. Leo feigned seeing it for the first time, his face a mask of shock. "Something like this happened. Your teacher, Master Ursula. She passed away." Chapter 190. Tilly hung her head, lost in thought. She fell silent for a long time, clearly unwilling to dwell on the topic. "So your teacher didn't succeed after all?" Leo said with a sigh. Tilly remained silent. Leo smiled to himself. Instead of comforting her, he decided to press on the wound. What happened to her in the end? Why wouldn't she want you to follow her path? He had to make her realize that her actions were a betrayal of her teacher's last wishes. Tilly needed to face the truth, not continue to deceive herself. At his words, Tilly's gaze flickered wildly. She anxiously ran her hands through her hair. Just remembering that moment filled her with dread and turmoil. "My teacher, when she died, it was horrible. Her body, it was torn into thousands of pieces. I couldn't even piece her back together, even though she was Ursula, the pinnacle of power in the Order, in the face of that thing. She was no more than an ant. Tilly had never hated this world more. The millennia of tireless research by the Order, all their efforts, now seemed like a cruel joke. They could accomplish nothing. The only thing they could do was wait in despair for the world's inevitable destruction, for the old gods to reawaken and plunge everything into terror and darkness. That was why she was so desperate to escape. Her teacher was gone. All she had left was Leo. She didn't want to carry this heavy burden anymore. It was meaningless. She just wanted to leave it all behind and run away with him. But her teacher certainly wouldn't have wanted her to open that gate again. That was Tilly's conflict. Lost in these memories, the emotional turmoil caused her body to distort again. This body was truly awful. Every time this happened, her psyche felt like it was trying to tear itself free. Tilly looked down at her hands in frustration, taking a long moment to stabilize her form. But then, as she stared at her own body, she remembered her plan. That's right. How could she have forgotten? She had planned everything out. How could she let a few words from Leo throw her into chaos? She looked up suspiciously, meeting Leo's worried and sad expression. What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Leo asked. It's nothing. Tilly shook her head. An old problem. She looked down again, a strange light hidden in her eyes. My teacher failed, but that doesn't mean I will. She was tried for the first time. She died because she was careless. But I'm different. I am fully prepared. My plan is flawless. If I succeed, my teacher will surely be happy for me. So she won't be disappointed. The argument was sound. The logic perfect. And so, Tilly slowly lifted her head. A confident smile spread across her lips. Leo, there's something I'd like to discuss with you. Leo frowned, already knowing what was coming. He sighed inwardly. He had underestimated Tilly's talent for mental gymnastics. When it came to self-deception, she was in a class of her own. Go on, he said, his expression placid, though he took an unconscious step back. Tilly briefly outlined her plan, her smile growing more and more ecstatic. Leo, let me kill you. We'll go to a beautiful new world together. She advanced, closing the distance between them. Leo kept backing away. Leo, she said quickly, I know this must be unsettling for you, but don't worry. I've tested the soul extraction technique countless times. Trust me, with me performing the procedure, there will only be one outcome. Success. Leo shot her a look. Trust you? Are you kidding me? I already died once because of you. Seeing him continue to retreat, Tilly's excited expression slowly hardened. A look of pain crossed her face. I could have just done it without your consent. I could have forced you. With the difference in our power, you would have no chance to resist. I'm doing this because I care about you. Everything I have is yours. I can tell you all my thoughts. So, she looked at him, her voice almost pleading. Leo, please say yes. Okay. After she spoke, the laboratory fell silent. Tilly stared at him, unblinking, waiting to see his agreement. But Leo just watched her quietly, saying nothing. His silence was a clear rejection. Tilly let out a nearly inaudible sigh. Her obsessive nature refused to accept it. Since you're silent, I'll take that as a yes. As she spoke, her right hand began to lift. The instant she moved, a crimson light flared around Leo. The next second, he reappeared 10 meters away. He had learned the vampire's signature speed and explosive movements from Evelyn and had practiced them many times. He was also familiar with the casting motion for Tilly's marionette hex and had been prepared for it. Tilly stared at Leo, who had darted away as if she were some kind of monster. Her expression grew even more disappointed. It seems you're really unwilling. Her eyes locked onto his position, and a teleportation circle blazed to life. In an instant, she reappeared in front of him, but she still couldn't catch him. A blur of red light flashed past, and Leo was once again 10 meters away. The two were like a cat chasing a mouse, one pursuing, one fleeing. With both of them using instantaneous movement, neither could gain an advantage. Tilly was growing visibly frustrated. The marionette hex only worked at close range, but Leo was as slippery as an eel. A cold sneer touched her lips. Oomph. Blood magic. I suppose you learned that from your vampire teacher. Her icy gaze followed him. If I had known it would be this much trouble, I shouldn't have considered your feelings. I should have just killed her when we got to the island. The thought of the other women around Leo pushed the already unstable Tilly further over the edge. Her expression twisted. Leo, I'm giving you one last chance. If you obey me, I'll be gentle. If you continue to resist, then don't blame me for being rough. A magic circle appeared in front of Leo again, but he was on high alert. The next second, he was far away from the spot where Tilly emerged. Fine, Leo, fine. Tilly's beautiful face contorted with rage. You chose this. I won't spare your body any longer. I will break you. She had completely abandoned the idea of a painless death for him. She roared, I will destroy your body completely. I'll leave you with just one breath of life. Tilly's eyes were fixed on Leo's face as she began chanting a rapid incantation. As the spell took effect, Leo felt the air around him thicken and grow heavy. An invisible weight pressed down on him, making it impossible to move. He felt like his internal organs were about to be crushed. This gravity magic was far more terrifying than the close-range marionette hex.